change is that the capital improvement program includes a number of maintenance items. When you look at the listing from Planet, those are the ones designated with an asterisk. So that is, for example, pavement resurfacing. That every year has a budgetary allocation. It varies in the streets that are resurfaced, but it is a recurring every year item based on the discussion at the September 17th workshop. We provided the clarification that that debt would be those non-recurring items, which might be a facility reconstruction or improvement such as the water plant.
Thank you. I did have a second question, if I may.
Sure.
Just before that, number 5 of section 5, would you explain why we are looking at 5 years for banking?
Absolutely. On banking services, the city actually traditionally reviews its banking relationship every 5 years. So this was actually just a clarification of current practice.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Other questions? If not, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The fourth item is the consideration of the FY 2018 Treasurers Report. Director of Holub will present as well.
Thank you, Chairman Morris. This annual Treasurers Report is a statutory requirement. It is in a format that minimizes the costs of publication, which is why it is somewhat difficult to read the vendor payments. But that is what most communities do in order to minimize the publication costs. So we do prepare a vendor history. We started this several years ago, and those reports are included in your packet, one alphabetically and one based on total dollar amount with the highest first. So that provides a more user-friendly analysis and also includes multiple years of information to show the vendor payments made by the city. And those two reports are also posted on the city's website in addition to the Treasurer's Report as published. And then the page 21 of the Finance Committee packet just includes the summary statement of condition, just summarizes the financial for FY 2018. That's also included in the published Treasurer's Report. So I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding that report.
Questions from members? If not, I think we have a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and that will also be on the City Council agenda this evening as
Right.
well.
The fifth item, we're starting to get into our budgetary season, and the Finance Department's begun working on the expenses as well as the property tax. So Director Holub?
Thank you again, Chairman Morris. This evening begins one of a number of meetings that the Finance Committee and the City Council will consider the tax levy for 2018. This is the tax levy approved in December of 2018 and then collected in calendar 2019 and is revenue for the city's fiscal year 20. So it's sometimes confusing regarding the years, but this estimated tax levy that this committee sees this evening is that which is non-binding, but meets a statutory requirement that would be an estimated tax levy going to the City Council on November 5th for consideration and approval at least 20 days prior to the actual adoption of the tax levy ordinance. So the estimate prepared and in your packet makes some assumptions. It does include the 2.1% increase, that is the cap, property tax extension limitation law, or tax cap applicable to 2018 levies. It also includes the actuarially determined contribution requirement for both police and fire pension. And you see that those increased requirements do exceed the 2.1% cap. It includes the debt service bond levies required related to all bond ordinances previously approved by the city that required tax levy support to pay those. We also abate the tax levy for any bond ordinances for which debt service is paid from another funding source, such as water utility revenues. But that debt section does include all of the property tax supported existing debt. What is not included in this estimate yet is an estimate for new growth. We received that from the county. And based on that estimate, we calculate the new growth amount that is outside of the cap. So that number will be included in the estimate that's provided to the City Council for consideration on November 5th. Subsequent to the November 5th estimate, the Finance Committee will again consider the tax levy ordinance on November 13th at the Capital Budget Workshop. And then the City Council will consider first reading approval of the tax levy ordinance on November 19th. And December 3rd will be the City Council approval and granting final approval of the tax levy ordinance. So this is a very early estimate, and again, it is non-binding, but can certainly be adjusted. We're just looking for the committee to give us a recommendation on what estimate to bring to the City Council on November 5th. So I'll be happy to.
Questions from the alderman? Alderman Marino.
Thank you. Would you explain the categories for pension funds? I see the section up at the top, and then down at the bottom, there's a fire pension PA 0689.
So as Alderman Moreno pointed out, the fire pension requirement is actually split into two sections. In 1993, the General Assembly approved enhancements to fire pension benefits. And in doing so, they carved out an exception from the tax cap for a certain portion of those enhancements. And so as part of the actuarial evaluation each year, we ask the actuary to provide us the amount of the increase that is subject to that public act. And so that amount is included down at the bottom outside of the tax cap calculation. So those two amounts are then added, and that's the total funding for fire pension.
And I wasn't much aware in 1993 of government approvals, legislation. When the changes were made and that 93 bill was enacted, was there ever any discussion at the state level of how municipalities might fund it?
There was a lot of discussion, and City Manager Kiley may correct me if I'm wrong, because it has been a while, but my understanding was that because of the concern of municipalities is why the General Assembly included that carve-out, so that it would increase the funding requirement of municipalities, but it would not require them to include that amount within the tax cap if they were subject to the cap. So that was kind of the compromise that the General Assembly offered.
But it is still an obligation of every city.
It is absolutely an obligation of every municipality.
Unfunded liability
Right, right.
mandated from on high. An old story.
I was hoping to find some solace, but
I
I
know.
should know better.
Well,
Other questions from the members? If not, I'd like a motion to recommend a non-binding tax levy estimate that will be presented at the November 5th, 2018 City Council meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye, motion carries. The sixth item is other business. There are attachments, the 2018 September flash report for the city. Any questions on the flash report for the director? And then we've talked about the accounting policies and procedures status update. Any other questions, business from the council?
Chairman Morris, if I might offer just one clarification related to the flash report, because I did receive a question last month, and so I thought it was important to clarify that for everyone. These prepayments on property taxes related to the variance that we're currently seeing in any funds that receive property tax revenue. So when the federal law changed related to income taxes for 2018, many people took the opportunity to prepay their property taxes in December of 2017. So what happened is that where a property tax bill is typically split between the June and September installments, Anything that was prepaid in December of 17, we received in June as part of the first installment remittances. And so it is simply a timing issue, so then we'll receive less in September. So by the time you see September and October financials, that variance will have evened out. So I just wanted to clarify that that was not affecting fiscal years or budget, just the timing of our receipts.
Very good. Questions?
Any
Alderman Marino?
expectation for that to reoccur this year?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard. But probably if there's not many changes in income tax law for 19, we probably won't see as many in prepayments.
Very good.
I just have one question. How does our new growth look? Because that's certainly a key here. Are you comfortable with the estimate that you have here?
Well, we haven't put in this schedule any estimate because we didn't have the data yet from the county. And what I received on Friday, there is still a question related to the new growth pertaining to the TIF versus new growth outside of the TIF. So I'm still working with the county on clarifying that because that will dictate the amount that goes into the schedule. Because any new growth related to the TIF will be set aside and not applicable to the overall levy. So that is the distinction I'm working with the county on determining before we bring that to you on November 5th.
But aside from the TIF, does it look like we're kind of on par with prior years in terms of?
We're on par. We're a little lower than last year.
That's what I
Last year, our new growth was about 2/3 of 1%, so it's not significant, but 0.66%. And right now, the number I'm getting is 0.44%. So the question I would have is that if that includes the TIF, then it would seem unusually low. So my assumption is that the 0.44 is new growth outside of the TIF, and that the new growth in the TIF is separate, but we just need to confirm that.
Yeah, because of the scale of the TIF.
Right.
Very good. Any other questions? That brings us to an opportunity for the public to address the committee. Are there any members of the audience that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, I think that brings us to adjournment.
Mr.
A
Chairman,
motion to adjourn. City Manager Kiley.
this is going to be called a filler because
Okay.
you're moving pretty quickly, and I think there's a lot of people who probably won't be here till 7. But I know that we have sent out to you written communications on the status of our ERP program. And so if you don't mind, maybe we will give just a 2-minute update. I say we.
You will.
Elizabeth will give us a 2-minute update on how that's going. And before she does that, though, I think some of you I know have been through similar kinds of efforts in organizations. But this is extremely significant for us. It's been a long time since we did anything like this. And knock on wood, and I know I'm probably going to jinx things, but things are going very, very well from our standpoint. And I know Alderman Preschlack has been sort of following this as well. And I think a lot of the credit goes to Elizabeth and Diane, who are here, and a lot of other departments that have been involved too. But they've done a lot of work to get us to that point. And I'm just happy that we haven't had some of the experiences that other municipalities have had when they've done similar types of undertakings. So with that, Elizabeth, I'll turn it over to you.
For the benefit of those in the audience and the public that may be watching, in December of 2017, the City Council approved a contract between the City of Lake Forest and BS&A Software to do a complete replacement of the city's enterprise resource planning software, which is where ERP comes from, so ERP. We are in the middle of that implementation. October 1st, we went live with our core financial modules, so most of that was just internal, very visible to the operating departments, but not very visible to the public because it was our accounting related functions, and the conversion went very well. And so departments are getting used to different ways to approve requisitions and different ways to approve invoices for payment. But the training has gone well, and the departments are doing really well with the implementation of the new software. We've moved now to additional modules. So in November, we will go live with utility billing. So that will have a significant outward face to the public and to Lake Forest residents. So the entire format of the utility bill has changed, I think in a very positive way.
And there's a whole online aspect to that, when you say outward, yeah.
And there is. So, yes, so anyone who currently pays their water bill online will do so differently. And so we'll be sending out information on how residents who do it now or would like to begin to do it can set up an account with BSNA Online Services and see very detailed information about their consumption history and be able to either set up recurring payments via ACH or credit card, or to make one-time payments if they prefer to do that. So that will be rolling out in November. And then in December will be the community development modules for building permitting and business licensing in the city manager's office. And then we will finish up in January with the payroll and human resources component. So it's very exciting. And as City Manager Kylie noted, it has gone very well. We have a great partner in BSNA. They are making it easier than it occurs in many places. So
I know one of the big selling points was, or really attractive from the user perspective, is the online aspect where, so in the case of community development, and a prodigious effort on the part of that department to take some complex processes. And so when you file a permit for a fence or whatever, it sort of tracks on there, and you can keep track of it online. If I overstate this now, Kathy, you jump right in there. And so some of the sort of perceived mystery and how long and, is it half done, or is it, what other steps are left, is visible, and I think, much more informative and productive in sort of the whole process, because think of, how many fewer phone calls there will be about where's my fence permit. So it's a leap into the 21st century by the city of Lake Forest, and it holds a lot of promise, at least from all the magazine articles I read about enterprises doing this. And I think it's the way businesses run themselves now, and we are an enterprise.
I don't know if Alderman Morris or Preschlack want to talk about sort of the other group that's out there providing some assistance.
Right, I was just going to comment that the director did a great job of doing the analysis as to what they need and how to select the vendor from the choices we had, and then a great plan. And then Alderman Preschlack reached out into the community to a number of members, including people from Accenture, who have done major systems implementation. And they came in August and met with the director to offer their critique of how things were going and what she should expect. And maybe you want to comment on that.
Yeah, it's just it's amazing just the level of talent in our community across so many dimensions. And these were two partners at Accenture that have both private and public experience putting in the software. And it was just an informal conversation to see if they could be helpful in any way. And it's just nice sometimes to have a person to bounce some ideas off of in terms of the implementation plan and the timing. And there's two things that always go wrong. It's data and change management. And really, it's a credit to the team that there were no issues. And when Elizabeth sent out an email and an update to the Accenture partners, Dan Hahn and Glenn Thomas, with the fact that went live on time, on budget, they just were over the moon. They're like, this never happens, hardly. And it's really great to see, and it's a credit to the effort of the team. So it's really a credit to Elizabeth to embrace them into the process and to just do it so well and on time and on budget. These projects always have issues, to Bob's point, and they were very impressed and obviously grateful as citizens too that it went really well.
I want to take a moment to thank the department heads. They're all sitting back there having to cope with the change management that we're going through, but they've done a great job. They've been a big help for the finance team to make that happen. So thank you to all of the people that are supporting us from the departments. It's been great.
So we're doing this in modules. When is it done, and done?
So everything should be complete by the end of January.
Oh. Wow.
So I think that was one interesting item from the Accenture folks, is that they deal with really big systems and, national, if not global, companies. So we're a totally different scale, which is nice that we can do it on such an aggressive timeline.
Yeah.
But I think that's good for the organization because we're just kind of hitting it 6 months and then we're out of it. And the enthusiasm throughout the organization is really high. So that's a big positive and a plus for BSNA to have so many people eager to embrace this and move forward with the implementation. So
I
it's
have to
fantastic.
confess, I saw that schedule, and as I look further down the page, I said, well, we'll know what it is when we get there. And so you're actually hitting it, which is terrific. Wow.
Very good. Mr. Kiley, any follow-up on all of that? You got 7 more
Great
minutes.
job.
All right, let's,
It's time for another dessert
we'll
break.
take a
All right,
5-minute break before starting council.
all right. So motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. To be returned.
impermeable surface, larger structures. It's not on us.
Good evening, Lake Forest, and welcome to the Monday, October 15th, 2018 session of Lake Forest City Council. Will the assistant to the city manager please call the roll?
Certainly. Honorable Mayor Lansing,
Here?
Alderman Beidler,
Here.
Alderman Morris,
Here.
Alderman Newman,
Here.
Alderman Rummel,
Here.
Alderman Reisenberg,
Here.
Alderman Preslack,
Here.
Alderman Moreno,
Here.
Alderman Bushman.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item, reports of city officers. I would first like to announce the appointment of Alderman Jim Preslack to a new city council liaison role with Lake Forest Library. Adding Jim, adding this liaison role and having Jim Preslack involved, I fully believe will be a key step towards resourcing both the strategy and planning work, as well as the funding challenges that all municipal libraries face today, including, and very importantly, our own very own and very treasured Lake Forest Library. Over the next few months, I will work with Jim on this endeavor to figure out the future, defined as the next 30 to 50 years, as we look towards a number of issues with respect to the building and capital investment and so forth that are very long-term in nature. Secondly, I have a proclamation for council
Mr. Mayor,
to consider. Yes, sir.
not to interrupt, but I'm not sure Janice is here yet.
Oh,
So could I have you hold that,
yes,
maybe?
we will hold.
Until she arrives. She was supposed to be here between 7 and 7:15, so she'll be here
Okay.
shortly.
Shall we proceed with,
Then double back.
Yeah, well, certainly, if we'll let her gather herself. I
On
do-
cue.
oh, On
On
cue.
cue.
That's not her.
Janice, perfect timing. Come on forward, please.
well, no, wait one second here. I'm going to read a little something, Janice, here. Whereas the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Historical Society is now the History Center of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, and whereas the History Center's mission is to connect people and inspire curiosity by exhibiting, collecting, sharing, and celebrating history, and whereas the History Center of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff has an accessible research room that harnesses the power of a wide-ranging collection and professional staff to connect patrons with stories of the past and solve history mysteries. And whereas the History Center of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff has opened a state-of-the-art museum with an interactive permanent exhibit that showcases the history of Lake Forest and a temporary exhibit gallery that will have year-round rotating exhibits. And whereas the History Center boasts over 500 members who help the History Center of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff bring life to history and history to life. And whereas the mayor and Lake Forest City Council offer their support and appreciation to the History Center of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff for their dedication and hard work in maintaining our community's history for all current and future Lake Forest residents to enjoy. Now therefore, I, Mayor Robert T. E. Lansing, and the City Council of the City of Lake Forest, Illinois, do hereby congratulate the History Center of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff on the grand opening of our newest treasure in Lake Forest. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the City of Lake Forest affixed this 15th day of October 2018. Do I have a motion for this proclamation?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Janice, let me hand this to you. Now, tell us all about it.
And Janice, before you begin, I might mention to everyone in the audience and at home that this is rather bittersweet, because while you're here to tell us about the wonderful things going on at the History Center, you're also here for the very last time. So if you could please also tell us about the new chapter in your life.
Okay, well, as many of you know, I've been at the History Center, now the former Historical Society, for the last 18 years. I was the first paid staff person. I started there as by myself, worked 3 days a week, and slowly we built up the organization into something that I'm really proud of today. And this is, I feel like this is a gift to you, the community, of this wonderful new History Center. And I've decided to work a little closer to home. I've lived in Chicago this whole time, and I'm going to work at the Night Ministry in Chicago that offers services for the homeless in Chicago. So I feel like I've given a lot to Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, wonderful community. You've taken me in, and you know, it's just been a great 18 years, and I'm going to go back and give a little bit to my hometown while I still have time left in me. So thank you to everyone and all the support and friends I've made over the years. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
So for the last time for me, I'm here to tell you about the brand new History Center. And this is what I've been dreaming of for years, this vision of coming to you with a proper place, a home for the history of the community. I think I knew from the day I started here that this community deserved a history museum that it could be proud of. And I'm so glad that through the work of staff, volunteers, board, support of the community, that we have arrived at our destination. So history has a new home. The brand new History Museum opened a week ago. Our new address is 509 East Deer Path. We're located in the former Church of Christ Scientist at the corner of Deer Path and Waukegan. We actually
Washington.
have two buildings.
Washington.
Oh, Washington, thank you.
You knew that. I know.
I knew that. I knew that, yes. That we have two buildings. We have the church that you see in the picture here that houses our exhibit spaces and our education hall. And then we also have what was a former house that the church owned as well, and that is our research room and staff offices. And then we have a museum collection that's actually stored in both buildings. We have more than 12,000 photographs. We have all these other artifacts, diaries and scrapbooks and organizational records, city council minutes, and those are stored in both buildings. So that's an important, although you see the public activities of the research room and the education hall and our programs, we have a very important fiduciary responsibility, which is to preserve the history, and we take that seriously as well. And as you heard, we have a new name and a new logo. We're now the History Center of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and we think this better represents what we do. I will mention as an executive director that we are still a membership organization. So for all of you that are members, please continue to support us. Now, our vision for this new History Center is to be a welcoming center where we can connect people with history in dynamic ways. I think we've taken a huge leap into the 21st century, and we don't think of ourselves so much as telling people the history as connecting people to history, because sometimes we're connecting people to each other and their stories, and that is sort of better reflects what we do. Now, we envision this place, when we talk about a welcoming center, It's a place to visit. It's a destination, and I'll talk in just a minute about our exhibits. But it's a place that families can visit together. New residents can come to town and learn about the community that they've just moved to, learn about their new home. We envision realtors bringing prospective clients by and coming by and seeing what a wonderful community Lake Forest is, and this is where they're going to decide to move to. It's a place to bring your out-of-town guests to show you what Lake Forest is all about. And just this weekend, we had several alumni groups come through that were back in town visiting. And one of the things that now that we have a place, a destination, we can focus forward and look at the youth in our community. And we want to develop and expand our educational programs as well, our school programs. Now, we just premiered the sort of the bling on our museum, and this was our permanent exhibit. And I just want to show you a video here, if I can get it up. So one of the things we did with our exhibit is that we purchased a content management system, and we have these wonderful touch screens in the exhibit that allow us to present many more stories than we've been able to before and add stories over time. And I'm here today also to thank the City of Lake Forest for a $50,000 gift towards the content management system and the touch screens. I think it's going to change the way people see history in the community, and it's going to be a place where people can gather for years to come and learn about all of the people, the places, events in the community. So thank you to the city for that very generous gift. We also in the building have a temporary exhibit space where we can have rotating exhibits. And currently we have an exhibit of drawings of artwork by Franklin McMahon. And many of you are familiar with Franklin McMahon and his drawings, and in fact the entire McMahon family of artists. These are drawings that have been on display before, but they all relate to civil unrest, and in particular the year 1968. And coming in February, we will be hosting an exhibit on Abraham Lincoln. We'll be borrowing this from the Waukegan Historical Society. This is also a space where we will be able to host community collections and topics of special interest. Perhaps there's an organization in town that's having an anniversary. This space is available for us to celebrate that. And of course, I don't want to forget our research room, which has been continuously open. We get several thousand research requests a year. Everything from a phone call saying, you know, what year was Lake Forest founded? Okay, yes, that's all I needed to know. To something more intensive, someone could be a scholar writing a book. This summer we had 2 high school students researching St. Patrick's Cemetery. So there's just always something, always opportunities to dive into our collection and learn more and celebrate more. I should mention also that we have thousands of photographs online that are accessible through our website, and that we have several paid internships with Lake Forest College. So the collection and the research room are kind of the backbone of what we do, and we're really the only place in town where some of these records can be found. We have, for example, we have the only existing hard copy of the Lake Forest left, so we consider that a very important role that we play. This past year, we've been celebrating the Illinois Bicentennial, and in fact, we're an official partner of the Illinois Bicentennial. And we will be finishing up with a Bicentennial Birthday Bash on Friday, November 30th. It's a members cocktail party, and I hope all of you, if you're not a member now, you will become a member and join us that evening. We kicked off our bicentennial programming this year with a very popular trivia night that we have, which is held in February. So start brushing up now. I heard last year the questions were kind of hard, but what do you expect when you get historians together to put together the trivia? So, and of course, opening a brand new history museum is our biggest bicentennial project yet. So, I just wanted to mention a few of our upcoming programs, and that will be held in our new Hunter Family Education Hall. We have a program, actress Leslie Goddard's going to be portraying suffragette Alice Paul this coming Friday. We're also hosting an evening with historian Craig Moreland, who did the movie about the orphanage in Lake Bluff, and also he has a new book out, Furnace Girl, that's based on a true story of a woman that was found burned and half dead in the basement of the Lake Bluff Village Hall. And then on Thursday, November 15th, we'll have a program connected with our exhibit of Franklin McMahon's artwork, which the exhibit was put together by Margot McMahon, one of Franklin's daughters, and she wrote a play about the McMahon family sitting around their dinner table in 1968. As many of you might know, Franklin McMahon took his children everywhere when he went to draw these events. And so this is an opportunity to sort of look into their family and see what they were thinking about, especially what the kids were thinking about. And then our fall 2018 hours, we're open up again on the weekend. So right now, this fall, we're open Tuesday through Friday from 10 to 4 and Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 4. And I just have to say there's more reasons than ever to visit the new History Center of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and I hope you all stop by. So thank you.
Thank you, Janice, and good luck.
Thank you.
The new History Center is truly another Lake Forest miracle, created out of whole cloth over many years. Humbly, not so many years ago, in an old stable, converted stable, up behind the library in town here that was the Masonic Lodge for a while, and then the city came into ownership of it, and it was full of cardboard boxes and some exhibits. And the opportunity to purchase the church property came up, and as happens in Lake Forest, a band of citizen volunteers got together, and several millions of dollars later, it really is an amazing 21st century, somewhat high-tech exhibition space about Lake Forest history. So we're all the better for it. City Manager Kiley, continue with your remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The second item under my report this evening is a report on how we're doing at the Deer Path Golf Course. And this evening, we have Vince Juarez from Kemper Sports Management, but our general manager out at Deer Path, who is going to give us a report on how we're doing, number one, and then provide a wonderful opportunity for Alderman Beidler and Newman to plug their fundraising activities as well. So Vince, hopefully you bring good news.
Absolutely. Good evening, council. Thank you for giving me a couple minutes here of your time. Just want to kind of go through a quick overview of where we're at the golf course. We're going to talk a little bit about the state of the industry, some course utilization. We'll go through some rounds information, the current financials, May through August. Go through some Forest Park Beach information, and then go through some True Review customer service ratings as well. Just a couple things here. This is the state of the industry. If you kind of look over to the right here, we've got some numbers over in the right-hand column over here with Chicago. Chicago, basically, this is a chart from August. Rounds in Chicago were down 4.5% for the month of August, and year-to-date in Chicago, rounds were down 3.9%. This is kind of a small slide, but what we're telling you here, this is the Deer Path Golf Course utilization here. So Deer Path Golf Course utilization, if you recall the previous page, utilization rounds were down 3.9%. We're actually up 4.9% May through August. So rounds at Deer Path, while the competition is down, while rounds in Illinois are down and Chicago are down, we're actually up 4.9% from May through August. This weekend utilization numbers, I pulled out some numbers up top. 11 o'clock utilization's up 11%. 12 o'clock utilization's up 12%, and utilization at 1 o'clock in the afternoon's up another 11%. So we're kind of bucking the trend as far as rounds and utilization in the industry. We pulled some utilization numbers from some competitive golf courses in our marketplace, and again, for the weekends, where we're up 4.5%, and our utilization's at 65%. Our competition's at 45%. So we're 20% higher than our local competition on the weekend utilization. Weekday utilization is pretty much the same, stands in line, where we're at 49%, our competition's at 45% for weekday utilization. So we're well ahead of our local competition out at Deer Path. Round trends, May through August. Our weekend rounds, our 18-hole rounds are up year over year. Our third-party rounds are up 1,300 rounds from the same period FY18. Those third-party rounds are, some Costco rounds, group golfers, some of our specials that we use that we kind of fence and try to fill in some slower periods. And those rounds are up 1,300 rounds. Weekend 9-hole rounds are up 500 rounds year over year, which it computes to a total 9% increase in rounds. Chicagoland, again, was down 3.9% for the same period, and we're up 9%. So we're looking good. Some happenings around Lake Forest. Highland Park Country Club, I think you're all probably aware that Highland Park has closed. Lake Bluff kind of has an unknown future. They're kind of looking into what they're going to do next year and couple years to come. Sportsman's, which is down in Northbrook, they're closing for renovation, much like Sunset Valley did last year. Sportsman's is going to close down in Northbrook this coming year, and Sunset has reopened. So we feel that we're in an excellent position to continue that rounds growth in the next couple years. Financials, kind of a small slide here as well, so I'll kind of walk you through it. Green fee revenue growth is up, and it's up year over year, 15% green fee growth. And that's due to our permanent tee times, our outings, our daily play. Our permanent tee times on Saturday mornings are full from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And on Sundays, we're pretty much about 90% full from 6 to 9 as well. But on Saturdays, we're 100% full up until 9:30 in the morning. FY19 revenue is up due to the cart paths. Obviously, we had the continuous cart paths, which were put in during the off-season last winter, and those have contributed to cart path revenue being up about 16% year over year. Overall, EBITDA through the month of August was up 30% year over year, and a 70% EBITDA change from the same period last year, or $70,000 EBITDA change from the same period last year. So everything's on an upward trend. Driving revenue, controlling costs. Some of the things that we do to drive revenue at the golf course, obviously, our outings. We're currently rebooking all of our outings for 2019. We had 27 total events. Some new events that we had this year were the Hilatora event, which we took from Highland Park. Highland Park Ford, which we also took from Highland Park. The Joey Dimmick Memorial, which is a golf outing for a local soldier who was killed over in Afghanistan. We took that outing as well. That was from a golf course up in northern Illinois, up in Gurnee. Morning Star, we took that event as well this year. So we've been continuing to build our outing clientele, our outings for the year, which is a big reason that revenue has been increasing. Permanent tee times, I talked about it already. 6 new tee times from neighboring communities in 2018 here, and we look to continue that in 2019. We continue our strong relationship with Richard Franklin and Discover Golf. He brings a whole new junior program to the facility year after year. Wonderful teacher, wonderful instructor. I know some of you had the chance to meet with him. The kids continue to come daily. We're still in the middle of the fall programs right now, and then we'll head into the winter session over at Waveland here in November. Community events. We've been big into strong community events, continuing to try to come up with new and innovative ideas for all different age groups and all different classifications. Our club championship, which is held in August or September of each year. We host a Cub Scout camp out. We did it last year in October. This year it might be a cold weather camp out for anybody that's a former scout. It's going to be the first weekend in November, where we're going to have the Cub Scouts from all the local dens in Lake Forest to come. They're going to camp out on the driving range. They'll have a camp out, a campfire. They'll watch a movie inside. We'll cook them hot dogs on Friday night. Saturday morning they'll have a breakfast, and they'll take their tents down and head home and warm up. We hosted a Glow Ball event last year, and we did the Glow Ball event. The Glow Ball event for this year in 2019 was the last weekend in September. We were full with about 50 participants. We use 4 holes on the golf course. We light them. We line the fairways. We light the holes. They have glow balls, and they play 4 holes of golf. So we had about 50 players for Glow Ball this year, and it was wonderful. Obviously, we took over the Lake Forest Beach concession operations this year. I'll get into that here in just a minute. Outside banquets, the Lake Forest College, we've hosted a couple events for Lake Forest College this year, and our women's golf leagues. For those of you that know, we have women's leagues on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings, and I'm happy to report that the women's golf leagues just finished up for the year, and all 4 women's leagues brought all of their luncheons to Deer Path. We were able to have all 4 league luncheons, along with most of their other luncheons at the golf course as well. Of course, we capitalize on our dynamic pricing to continue to drive revenue at the facility. You know, when we're booked, we're 65% utilized on the weekend. If you could see those smaller areas between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., we're almost 100% utilized. So when we do have open tee times during that time frame, we use our dynamic pricing to obviously capitalize and get as much revenue out of those tee times as possible. Controlling costs. We continue to control payroll through flexible staffing decisions, making sure that we can cross-utilize our staff amongst different areas, from golf to food and beverage to golf, et cetera, outside services. We move people from F&B at the golf course down to the beach when necessary. Staff only when necessary. This is the time of year we start to, kind of look at our staff and make staffing decisions based on weather, based on tee sheet, et cetera. Preventative maintenance on all of our equipment. It's important to continue to put the money into our equipment so that we can continue to operate with the equipment that we have. We have quite a few pieces of equipment on the maintenance side that we've been continuing to maintain year after year, and the crew has gotten it through and will continue to do so. Continued close monitoring of inventories. We obviously control our inventory very well, both on the food and beverage side and the golf side, to make sure that we can control our costs there. Just a couple pictures of the outings on the patio here that we have. Some of the ladies' luncheons, some of the outings, golf outings, and of course the Cub Scout camp out, always a fan favorite. Forest Park Beach, just a quick recap of the beach. We were very pleased to be asked to run the beach operations this year. We hired 4 high school kids out of Lake Forest High School that really took control of the beach on a day-to-day basis. We are open weekdays from 10 to 6, weekends from 10 to 6 as well. We did have some extended alcohol sales for weekend special events, things like that. We sold approximately $11,000 in beer while we were down there. We were there from Memorial Day to Labor Day itself. Beverage sales were about $10,000, and we sold over $41,000 in food during that 3-month period. 3,000 ice creams were sold in that 3-month period. 1,200 orders of fries, 1,000 orders of chicken tenders, 700 orders of mozzarella sticks, and 1,200 hot dogs. So quite a few beach-worthy items. We did have turkey sandwiches and some other healthy options as well, but these are the most popular. So wonderful operation, wonderful operation. It was, we love being down there. We appreciate it. Kind of a small slide here as well, but the point of this, we've got our NPS results, and for those of you that are familiar with NPS, Net Promoter Score. Basically, everybody has gotten phone calls from your cable company, from AT&T, DirecTV, Dish Network, what have you. Their NPS score, just to kind of put it on a scale here, they are typically down in the teens. That basically you're not going to be a promoter of their business. Disney, Amazon, Apple, they're typically up in your 85% or 85 in that range up there. DeerPath is 75.6 is our Net Promoter Score as of September 1, 2018. So as a company, Kemper Sports, our goal is to have a Net Promoter Score of 70. So we've exceeded our goal from a Kemper standpoint, and we've exceeded our, kind of the expectations and bucking the industry there as well. That's up from 62.1 back in 2016, and I think it was 53.8 a couple years before that. So from 53 all the way to 76.
Good stuff.
FY19 outlook. So FY19 shaping up to be revenue growth and EBITDA growth from year prior. We did have some floods throughout the year that did affect revenue. Even though we are up revenue-wise year over year, we had floods in May. We had another flood in June, and we had the big flood on Labor Day weekend, which we were actually closed Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of Labor Day weekend, and that did affect us quite handily. Overall effect on revenue for Labor Day weekend was about $50,000 in loss of revenue from that flood on Labor Day. Emphasis on continuing to provide best-in-class service to Lake Forest community while pulling new customers from neighboring communities. We're always looking to support Lake Forest. We're looking to promote different events, create different events. We have a Fall Classic, which we're going to host the last Sunday in October, which we've just started emailing out to our database. We've already gotten a couple of responses from the community, from people that are going to play in the Fall Classic. We continue to focus on F&B growth, new events, returning clientele, our women's leagues, our juniors. We just booked an event today for next year for Lake Forest High School for a reunion that they're going to have in September. And of course, continued facility improvements, providing first-class golf course. We have our halfway house facility, which is going to be, construction is going to start on that shortly, and some other improvements that we're looking at as well. Kind of an over the years, 2014 through 2018, and I've only been with the facility, this is my second year. Junior golf programs continue to produce top golfers in Lake Forest, and they are our future members. All those junior golfers that come out of the Discover program and any junior golfer that comes through that facility will be our next member at DeerPath. Projected FY19 EBITDA up 85% from FY14. NPS, I already mentioned, going from 53.8 back in 2014 to 76.2 in 2018, so quite a bit of growth on NPS. We've successfully handled the bar renovation, the patio renovation, the cart paths, the drainage, and we'll be working on the halfway house as well. Service ratings, which were part of the NPS of the Mindshare, service ratings went from 9.0 to 9.4 in the 4-year span, and the course ratings went from 7.9 to 8.5. Our total rounds continue to beat the competition. We're up year over year, and they continue to beat all of the local facilities. And of course, we've expanded our services to the beach. So we've had a successful year. We continue to look to improve and to continue to look to drive revenue and control costs, and be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
It's,
Very nice job.
shows a lot of leadership, Vince. Terrific.
Thank you.
you
All right, have a good day.
very much.
Thank you, Vince.
Finally, Kathy, can you put the slide up? I did want to mention, the city council has directed staff to proceed with updating the city's comprehensive plan and has identified the Waukegan Road Settler Square Business District as our first section of the comprehensive plan that we're going to be updating. And we're having a public drop-in workshop at Fire Station 2 on Thursday, October 25th from 6 to 8:30 p.m. and the public is invited. I don't know, Kathy, if there's anything else you want to add about the announcement?
This is really the second piece of the working group's activities. They've spent some time getting familiar with the area just individually. And this really is an opportunity for interested parties, whether they live in that immediate area or anywhere throughout the city, to come in, look at maps, offer ideas, comments, ask questions. Don't expect answers. There won't be answers at this workshop. And there will be future opportunities, but this really is the data gathering portion. So I encourage everyone to stop by. You don't have to be there right at 6 o'clock. You will be able to stop in anytime during those hours.
Thank you. And that completes my report for this evening.
Thank you.
I was just going to add,
Yeah.
he kind of cut us off there. That,
Retaking the platform.
I think Vince has done an extraordinary job, and this is a remarkable story at Deer Path Golf Course. So our utilization is up, so we're attracting more golfers, which usually can cause a strain on the ability to deliver a high service level, but in fact our service rating has gone up. So this is just a remarkable story, and while I'm at it, we have undertaken, we will be breaking ground on a halfway house on November 6th, and soon after we hope to begin construction of a new cart barn that will next spring hopefully include a new cart fleet. So we're continuing to upgrade our facility. We are still looking for donations. Prue and I have been working on that. Phase 1, which is the halfway house, the cart barn, and the cart fleet, is between 60 and 70% funded from the private fundraising that we've done. We want to get that done, and we want to move on to phases 2 and 3. So we're still looking for donations from the community to help us achieve our goals. If you haven't seen anything on this campaign, you can reach out to myself or to Prue, and we'll be happy to guide you along. Prue?
If I'd heard that pitch, I might be nervous about reaching out to one of us, because we are pretty enthusiastic about seeking support for this project. But we would love to talk to you about it. Also, you can go to I think probably is the best place, the city website. Sal, I'm looking at Sally because this is a part of the park system. What's the best way for people to get online to get information?
Actually, the best and easiest way to access the information for this program is on the Deer Path Golf Course website.
Perfect. Okay.
There's an icon that you can click, and it will take you through the brochure.
And that's actually also an icon that you can use to make a contribution.
As well, yes.
Okay.
That's
So-
deerpathgolf.com, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that's important to say to all of you out here now who might be interested in doing this, but also to those of you at home, this is still a 3-year pledge period. So you could, if you want to make a gift and you do it over 3 years, you can do this year, the year after it ends in 20. So obviously, if you're in 19, it's only a 2-year pledge period, but we would love to have you take advantage of the 3-year pledge period. And a number of our donors have done exactly that. We are close to $1 million. Tim and I were just talking about that today. So that's good, but we really do need, we're in getting the funds right now. We're fine on the halfway house, but we really do need the funds to be comfortable breaking ground on the cart barn. The way this project has worked, it's the most recent of the city's public-private partnerships, and the way it's worked is we've done it over a number of years, and I think because golf is pretty seasonal, although I've seen some people out there on extraordinary days that I wouldn't have thought were golf days.
is that each season, and for the last couple of years, there's been sort of a new surprise there, whether it's the terrace from a couple of years ago and the improved clubhouse, and now the continuous cart paths, which have made a giant difference. There will be wonderful surprises next year. We want you to see them, but more importantly, we would like you to help us make it happen. So go to the website or call us. We'll be happy to make the pitch.
Well, thank you. A work in progress, and steady as she goes, and doing very well to date.
Well, we talked about the History Center tonight. This is just another asset within the community that I think is an important part of the community. We have Gordon Center, we have Ellowa Farm, we have Ragsdale, we have all these community assets, and I consider Deer Path Golf to be one of them.
Well, it is. For folks who certainly have grown up here or moved here, it's a principal recreation element, and speaking of that, I will use that to segue to one of the crown jewels of our recreational activities in this town, in the form of the committee reports, the Public Works Committee, to talk about our beach on the shores of Lake Michigan. And to introduce the topic for this evening, City Manager Robert Kiley and Michael Thomas, Director of Public Works.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You know, at the October 1st council meeting, when we last talked about this, Rami Lopat said something that really stuck with me. When she said, and I'm paraphrasing, but she effectively said that she still hasn't made up her mind about whether she likes option 1A or option 3A. And for those of us who know Rami, you know that Rami typically has a very definitive position on issues. And so it caused me to pause and say, well, if Rami feels that way, there's clearly a lot of other people on the city council and in the community that also feel the same way. And I think part of my bias going into that meeting, and I think all of you will admit that I was really trying to push you at that meeting to make a decision. And only one bit, and that was Alderman Reisenberg. He was ready to go. But as I reflected on that, I realized that it really wasn't fair for me because so many people were still taking the information in, were digesting the information. But also what I came into that meeting with a bias of was the previous meeting that we had to talk about capital improvement projects. And I took away from that meeting that, okay, I think the council recognizes that we have all these capital needs, and so 1A is the answer and we've got to move forward with it. But what I missed in that whole thing was the loss not just of trees, but of land. And the distress and the anguish that some were feeling about that loss. And when you look, and some of the speakers too, because when you look at the comments made from some of those speakers, they had real emotional attachments to the property, to the land, to what has been accomplished by the Forest Park Board. And I think we need to appreciate that there are a lot of people in town who also would be impacted emotionally by that loss. Now, clearly, there's going to be a lot of people in town who are not going to be impacted. And they're going to probably say, if you decide to go with 3A, they're going to say, that's the craziest idea you ever had. Why did you do such a thing? But, you know, I think it shows in the community we're going to have people on both sides of the issue. And at the end of the day, you collectively are going to have to make the decision that you feel is in the best long-term interest of the community. The good news tonight is there's no hard sell tonight. I promise I'm not going to push you because at the last meeting, at the October 1st meeting, we said that we were going to give to November 5th to go out and try and raise private monies. But this evening, what we thought we would do is take this opportunity to sort of step back and to present an overview to both the council, to the community, of really all the conversation that has taken place, not just within the last 4 months, but this has been a topic that's really been before us for a number of years. and to sort of talk about that and refresh that so that come November 5th, we're all working off the same basic information and have an idea as to really what the impacts are going to be, both short-term and long-term going forward. So clearly, we are making a very thoughtful and a well-reasoned decision, ultimately, whatever that decision might be. So tonight, we're going to go through a presentation. We're going to do or provide a little history on the Forest Park improvements that have taken place over that period of time. We'll talk about the 2017 bluff monitoring risk evaluation that was conducted by AECom on behalf of the city. We're going to give you an update as to where we are with the North Beach Access Ravine improvement project that the council has approved. We'll talk about sort of the South Beach Access Road, and then these areas that were identified in the risk evaluation, the watch areas, the moderate risk areas, the boardwalk, which is part of that moderate risk area, and then the North Bluff area, which resulted in the slide that brought us here this evening. Also, in the course of the presentation, we will be talking about the areas or the affected trees and the tableland that's going to be affected. Mike Thomas will give us an update on sort of construction timing and what that means. And then Sally will go through what does this mean from a beach impact statement, how will this affect operations in 2019. And then even though I'm not going to force you to make a decision, I do want to clarify the to-do list. So those are things that are before you that have to be addressed, maybe some tonight, maybe some not tonight. Now I will say that we have prepared this agenda for under the Open Meetings Act, that if you do want to take some form of action, you have the right to do so tonight. But clearly, because there's going to be so much information presented here this evening that you may choose not to, or if Alderman Reisenberg can convince everybody else to go along with him, maybe you will. We'll see where that ends up tonight. The other thing I want to stress too, and well, two things I want to stress. Number one is Lake Forest is not alone in this. We have consulting engineers who are with us this evening that are doing similar projects for both private and public clients up and down the shore. And it's funny because I didn't really think about this because I said, well, you know, does the city of Chicago have this problem? And really when you think about the city of Chicago, they don't have bluffs. And as you go further north from Chicago, even Evanston to a certain extent doesn't. So really we're talking about an area from, you know, Waukegan up to Waukegan, or I'm sorry, Evanston to Waukegan, that really is sort of in the same boat that we are. But I will tell you that there are a lot of other towns, North Shore towns, that are watching what we are doing because they have similar problems. I was actually down in Open Lands Project down at Fort Sheridan, and they have a very similar slide down in Fort Sheridan that we have here. Now, that didn't take out a road in that case, but clearly they have issues that they're going to have to deal with as well. I will also add that tonight we have the A-team here. So if you have any questions whatsoever, somebody on the A-team is going to be able to address it. Probably not me, but somebody a lot smarter than me. We have Mike Thomas, you know Mike, and Jim Lockefear, Sally Swarthout, Chuck Myers. We also have Bill Weaver from AECom, Mike Bleck from Bleck Engineering, and Dan Strand, City Engineer, Gewald Hamilton. So if you have any really hard questions, they're going to be here to respond to those as we go through this presentation. So since we're into really small slides tonight, I thought I would present this one. But what this shows is really we've been engaged at Forest Park with various improvements in various ways from 2009 to 2019. Because in 2009, and it really wasn't that long ago, we actually did some work on the North Beach Access Road when we had to repair the retaining wall and repair the road and do some other work there. But similarly, we've done some work with the South Beach Access Road, both in FY12 as well as what we just completed last year. And then, of course, the Forest Park demonstration project that we're all very familiar with as well. So there has been a history of projects, and that's why I think at a past meeting when Sally said, you know, there's been a lot of activities that's been disruptive, we do have to keep that in mind, is that there has been a lot going on down there, and it hasn't been just a quiet opportunity for residents to just go down there and meditate and enjoy the beach and so forth.
Now, these are just the city's outlays.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing that up, because these are just the city. This does not reflect the private funding for the Forest Park demonstration project, which was another 3.7, Alderman Beidler, is that number sound right?
I noticed Mr. Cherry in the audience. I'm guessing he could be a little more accurate.
4.2 might do it.
4.2, thank you. 4.2 is not reflected in here. So a lot of work has taken place down in that Forest Park area and the beach area. When we had, going back to 2012 and into 2016, when we started to have some of the initial problems with the stabilization of the bluff, we asked AECom to take a look at, from the South Beach Access Road to the North Beach Access Road, to do a risk evaluation. And I'm not going to go in any great detail. Bill Weaver is here if we want to drill down further. But generally, as you might suspect, the areas of red are the areas of concern that we have. So no surprise that the area on the North Bluff that we had the most recent slide, you'll notice all the red that's there. We're going to talk about some of these other areas as we go forward, but I think it's important to remember that this is something that we have been aware of, that we have sort of prepared ourselves for. We just didn't anticipate that Mother Nature, with all the rain that we've had in 2018, was going to force this subject front and center on the community and onto the City Council this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Thomas, who's going to walk us through both the North Beach Access Road as well as some of these watch areas.
Thank you, good evening. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. We wanted to provide, as Bob noted, an update to the North Beach Access Road Ravine Project. We spoke with the contractor today. His response to me, I said, so when do we anticipate having this project completed? He was 90% confident that they would be completed by Christmas. So that is a good thing. What we're waiting on, there are two main structures. There's a junction chamber and a box culvert, which are very large concrete precast structures that need to be, the design sheets have to be signed off by the engineer, which they have been. Then they are now into production. So those are the first two large pieces of material that need to be set accurately with absolute precision on their elevations. So once those arrive, those are set, then the rest of it, quite frankly, will move rather quickly. As Bob noted, to start off on the south end, the South Beach Access Road is, as we all are aware, the project that was completed last September for a cost of $1,369,000. This was the first area, again, on the South Beach that we needed to address. We realized and began to see some failures in the fall of 2016. We had AECom do a study of the entire bluff system that was presented to City Council at their March 2017 budget meeting. But if we were actually to include the ravine that is just on the west side of the South Beach Access Road, that would bring the total project cost up to $1,846,000. So there was a good amount of work that was done on the south end. Moving up, we're going to go from what we're going to call watch areas to moderate risk to the big one, the north end. Watch areas exactly are that for us. They're areas along Forest Park that we need to keep our eyes on and be aware of, but they really are not telling us that there's any immediate concern. Number one, we label this area as number 6. This is the south parking lot up on top, and here is where the path begins. This area, again, is above the fire ring. If you were down at the beach from the fire ring area and you were to look straight up, that is where this area is located. Again, it's been identified by AECom in their map area. as an area for us just to watch. The engineers have been down there multiple times and have confirmed that as well. Watch area number 5, the northern entrance to the boardwalk. This is the Ring Road entrance, so we're coming in at Spring and Lake and making our hard turn to the north. Right there is the northern entrance to the boardwalk. Again, very similar to the other area, watch area number 6. It's an area that has moved a little bit, and we need to keep our eyes on things. Bob is going to speak about the boardwalk issue a little later as we go through the presentation. Area number 4. Area number 4 is in front of the Legacy bench, this larger bench. This is the pathway as it moves through the gravel path as it moves through Forest Park. Again, identified here on AECOM's map. This is somewhat of a difficult picture to see, but this area has dropped about 10 feet. So it is an area that we are watching. It may move up to a moderate risk area, but we're going to continue to keep our eyes on this, especially in the entire park facility after every significant rain event. We move then to what we refer to and our engineer referred to as our moderate risk areas. So area number 3, again, which is very close. Here is again the south parking lot up on top. This area is right near the entrance to the boardwalk. It's an area that has moved. It's something we are keeping our eyes on. This area and the other moderate risk area are areas that we may come to City Council at some point and recommend that we proceed with design. We would do a pre-design to come back with design with options and then proceed with a full design. From there, these types of projects, the moderate risk projects that are ones that are potentially in the future, we think we might be able to go after grants on those. Again, to proceed and to go after grants, you need to have a full, complete design. This area and the next area are ones that we think have that potential. The next area, the moderate risk area number 2, I know many people have seen this. Again, as you begin to walk down the pathway from in this area, from the south parking lot, it's a larger area. We have it marked off with some fencing at the moment, but it is near the southern bench. And we actually had to take a tree down there last year, a large significant tree that actually was beginning to fall, and the weight of that tree was pulling the bluff away as well. But this area has has moved to a point where we need to, as I said, mark it off. We really ask residents not to get near that area. Bob, you're going to talk about the boardwalk.
Let me touch on this subject that the staff has actually been sort of monitoring this for some time, because the boardwalk is 30, 31, 32 years old. And other than some minor repairs where maybe a tree came down and took out a board here or there, that the boardwalk itself has not received any significant renovation or repair work. And so, as luck would have it, on June 26th, I think the day before the other slide, that this area had moved, as Mike said, and so we actually closed the boardwalk off to public access. You can sort of see it here, but you can see that it's not as stable, and we actually have other trees that have since moved onto the boardwalk that have to be dealt with. And so when this immediately happened back in June, we did some preliminary calculations, and to build the boardwalk in place and to meet ADA requirements, we had estimates of about $800,000. And the concern the staff had was that to put the boardwalk back in place in an area that we know is unstable probably didn't make long-term sense, because we would be coming back and probably addressing it another time. So in the course of our discussions and conversations, we reached out to Bleck Engineering and say, what other alternatives do we have? And Mike was talking about, this is the South Beach Access Road, and for those of you that have gone down the South Beach Access Road, there is a space on the east side of the road where you could build a new walkway to a point where you then construct a boardwalk which would meet ADA requirements and empty out here right near the South Boat Pavilion. The estimates for that work would be approximately $300,000. And the staff feels, as Mike was just indicating, that due to the fact that this is not a critical need right of way, that this would be a project that would make sense for us to go ahead, prepare the engineering, and then seek grant monies or private monies or what have you, and not do the work until such time as the money would come in. The one thing that the staff will really ask the council, whether it's tonight or certainly no later than the November 5th meeting, is we would very much like to begin removal of the existing boardwalk. I believe it's a hazard. I can say I think we're fortunate that we haven't had kids getting on there, playing around with it. It is an unstable area. And if we are permitted to begin the work, we can do it in-house. Chuck Myers has said that he'd really like to get on it in November and into early December, because once snow falls, you really don't want your crews operating on the bluff area, taking it down. But we would basically dismantle it, bring it down into the parking lot area, and then haul it away with city crews. And we could do that over the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks. And at least get that out. What they would do is just cut, leave the pylons on. The only issue that we still have to work out with Bill Weaver of AECOM is the fact that we've put, I'm going to call them meters because I'm going to mispronounce the real name, but we've put meters on there to monitor movement of the land. And so if we remove the boardwalk, we'll have to relocate those, but I think we can do that without too much difficulty. So this is an issue that I think, I would say is also a short-term issue, because we need to do something with the current status of the boardwalk. It had to be fixed or repaired in some way, shape, or form, but we think that this is a very cost-effective alternative that meets the same needs. Actually, the current boardwalk's not ADA compliant, or wasn't ADA compliant. This would be, and so it would be more accessible for those people that need to access the beach this way versus the stairs. The next, and I'm just going to touch on this very quickly because you've seen these from the last couple of meetings. Obviously, as Mike talked about, this moves to the North Bluff, or the high-risk area number 1, which, was not, we knew it was out there. We were very concerned about it. We didn't recognize how quickly this might happen. But, what is interesting to me on this picture here, and I've probably driven up and down that North Beach Access Road hundreds and hundreds of times, is you don't have an appreciation for how steep the slope was because it was heavily vegetated. And I think you saw from the engineering reports you had from both Bleck Engineering as well as Gewalt Hamilton that, you're talking almost a 1-to-1 slope in some of these areas, and that's just not stable. And so it's sort of not surprising that we saw this, and the real question that we have before us now is what is the best long-term solution for dealing with this area, whether it is option 1A of regrading the bluff or option 3A, which is moving the road eastward and actually building the area back up. Mike also shared with you this comparison of the two options at the last meeting, so I'm not going to go over them in great detail. The one new piece of data that we added, and it gets into what Mike is going to talk about next, is this construction impact. Because under option 1A, we're actually taking dirt out, and there'd be approximately 1,057 semi-trucks that would be coming in and out of the site under option 1A, where in option 3A, that number is 2 times that, about 2,004. In that case, they're bringing dirt onto the site versus taking dirt off. And there's some implications of that. And again, it's one of those that we just want the council and the community to understand what those construction implications are going to be, and particularly the homeowners who live near Forest Park and what that impact is going to be going forward. But before we get to that, I know there were a lot of questions at the last meeting too about trees, and there's nobody better to talk about trees than Chuck Myers.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. So I am going to talk to you about the previous slide had listed 17 trees that would be impacted in option 1A. So the table on the right kind of breaks it down. And I will remind you that heritage tree, as defined by our city code, is any tree that is 18 inches or above. So 18 inches in diameter, I should say. Most of these trees are oaks, and I'll get into that in a moment, but of those 17 trees, 10 of them are considered heritage trees. Of that 10, 9 are oaks, 1 of them is a sugar maple. The next line on the table shows 6 trees that are non-heritage or poor condition. So I can tell you that 3 of them are in poor shape. Those are trees that are near the ring road. Now that they have been identified as poor, we as a forestry department have an obligation to take those out anyway. Those will be coming out one way or the other, given their poor rating. And then there is one memorial tree, and you can see it on here right near the trail where the small trail branches off. That's a 10-inch sugar maple. The tree itself is a smaller tree. The reason I separated it out is because it is a memorial tree. It is something that I would have put on the list of removals typically. We'd want to try to reach out to the family, see if they would be okay with replacing it with a possibly one of the transplant trees. But we haven't gone that far, given we haven't made the decision yet. We could also transplant the tree. It would be costly for a tree like that, that size. It could be done, though. So of the 10 heritage trees I mentioned, 8 of those, or I'm sorry, with the heritage trees, 8 of them are white oaks. And they're all over 20 inches in diameter. One of them is 24 inches. One of them is the sugar maple, as I mentioned, and 1 red oak. So of the oaks, those white oaks are very old trees. Typically on a lakeshore like that, on Lake Michigan, we find that the trees, they're in a special zone where they do grow very slow. So we believe them to be over 200 years old. Some trees that we've had to take down in the south part of the park, one of them, I think Cliff Miller told me, one of them was measured to be about 270 years old. So probably they're in that ballpark of over 200 years old. The red oak is also a very old tree. So they are spectacular trees, there's no doubt about it. But individually, they're important. However, collectively, that grouping of white oaks is somewhat unique in itself. So, and many will point that out to you, that it's not just the individual trees, it's that unique density that you don't see a lot in this area. So that's what I had on it. Happy to answer questions at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and let Mike take over.
With regards to construction timing, and as we spoke about at the last meeting, there are chances to try and complete the project before the beach opening, but this all depends upon the decisions that City Council makes, if and when City Council makes those decisions. So, for example, if City Council were to decide to proceed with 1A, and you were to make that decision this evening, we believe we could have the project completed before Memorial Day. If we move down and we talk about the November 5th city council meeting, and city council were to be okay with construction to happen during the beach season, then we would have it completed by June 18th. Afterwards, early December, and then if city council were to make their decision at the December 3rd city council meeting, July 15th of 2019, if we were to construct during beach season, December 8th after. If we move to option 3A, if city council were to make a decision this evening and we're okay with some construction occurring during the beach season, our estimate is that the project can be completed by mid-July, July 18th to be specific. If you did not want that to happen and you wanted construction to happen after the beach season, after Labor Day next year, we would be looking at Memorial Day of 2020. And then again, the next two city council meetings dates, November 5th and December 3rd, have their dates as well. These next two slides, I apologize, we put together today. They are not in your packet, but we wanted to explain to yourselves and the residents at home what the construction areas would look like. Again, to orient everyone, Deer Path is here. North Beach Access Road is here. This is the exit lane to the Ring Road. Again, a majority of the work for 1A would occur on top of the bluff. Semis, we would actually close down Lake Road from the North Beach Access Road to Deer Path. You'd have semis staged on Lake Road, maybe one or two staged here, but as they are filled up, they would leave, drive straight out. We'd probably use this area here as a simple turnaround area. The contractor said his goal would be to load about 8 semis an hour. And as Bob noted, 1A has about 1,000 semis. Option 3A. Option 3A, all the work is completed down at the base of the bluff. We use this entire area for staging and for a turnaround. Again, a good amount of material, 20,000 yards, would need to be brought in. Majority CA6, which is stone that has fines that can compact. There will be about 1,000 yards of clay. But again, you would have 2,000 truckloads coming down, dropping their material, and then going back up Deer Path. Right now, it's too early to say whether they'd take Deer Path to 41 or they'd go McKinley into Lake Bluff, but either way, you have a significant number of semis. To give you a reference point, we look back in 1986 when the beach project was constructed. I believe we had over 12,000 semis for that project. The South Beach Access Road.
The number is 14,400.
Just over 12,000. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
Our record showed
From
12,
the
but
archives.
I trust
No, well,
absolutely.
That's what we built that thing.
The South Beach Access Road last year, we took out about 10,000 truckloads. But the difference with that is that impact did not impact many people because everything was staged at the south end. They had a turnaround area on the actual roadway itself. The residents down south of Spring Lane, yes, they were impacted without question because there were semis staged, but a majority of them were down onto that roadway. So this would be different. 1A and 3A, you'd be having a lot of those semis coming in. One of the things that we wanted to highlight too was if City Council were to make a decision this evening, and if design could be completed by the end of January and go out to bid in February, we would look to have the project start in March. So logistically, we think March, April, May to get a lot of the heavy work done before school is out, before the beach is open, before people are parking on Westminster and walking. We at staff would love to see those semis out of here before all of this was to proceed. But again, it's City Council's decision as to how to proceed. Got it. So Sally's going to talk about the beach impact.
up on the screen, you'll see a red line delineating where we would want to fence off the beach, should we, for either project actually, just to provide a great safety zone for folks. It actually, as you come down the Belvedere stairs, it would be just north of that, and it would skirt the sand cell and go out to that groin that comes out to our second rock abutment. It would virtually take off cell 1, which is also known as the adult beach, out of use for the summer or for the duration of the project. I can tell you that last summer, we had to come up with a plan pretty fast. I think based on this project and the timing, this will give city staff some good months to actually come up with a plan that's most efficient. And listening to Alderman Preschlack, get our marketing campaign so that we can educate our residents so we have buy-in and understanding as to how we would go forward. City staff would make these plans, and we would work with the Park and Recreation Board to come up with a recommendation for City Council as to how we would most efficiently operate and provide the best customer service that we can during the course of either one of the projects.
Sally, where is that handicap pier that goes out?
Currently, the handicap pier does come straight out of cell 3. So if you go over close. Oh, you don't really want me to do this, do you? So, here's the Belvedere stairs are here. This is what we finally call cell 3, which is where most of our swimming activity happens, and this is the pier right there.
Okay,
So it
thanks.
would not.
Just want to be sure it wasn't
Yeah,
impacted.
it would not be impacted, and the beauty of that pier is that it can actually be relocated.
Right.
Thank you, Sally. So let's talk about the council's to-do list. Actually, it isn't just the council's, it's the staff and communities as well. But with respect to the watch areas that Mike referred to, we will continue to manage and monitor those areas, and if need be, come back to the city council with any corrective action that may be required. When I say that we'll manage and monitor, what I mean is that, particularly during the season, we have crews down there literally every day. And now we've put on our list of places to go after heavy rains is the beach. To check it out based on what happened last June. So this will be something that Parks and Forestry crews will be looking at on a regular basis. And there will be additional trees that will be leaning, will be falling over, and those will have to be taken out at the appropriate time when the city forester or Chuck believes that they're causing more stress on the area. But the hope is that these areas, while they might move, they're going to move slightly and not pose a danger to anyone or an inconvenience to any of the operations that are down at the beach. With respect to the moderate risk areas, as I mentioned earlier about the removal or replacement of the boardwalk, we really do believe that it's time to remove the boardwalk. It's both a good time operationally, but quite frankly also to remove a hazard before something bad happens. Somebody gets hurt on the existing boardwalk, and then begin plans for creating that new walkway along the South Beach Access Road and the new boardwalk area, as well as reinstall, once we take the boardwalk down, the monitors so that we can continue to watch the area and make sure that if it is moving, we're aware of it, and are there other actions that the city can take, hopefully not costly actions, but actions that we can take to continue to keep those bluffs stable as much as we possibly can. And then in the high-risk area, and we talked about these last week, need to make a decision whether we proceed with design options 1A or 3A. We then need to approve engineering proposals for whichever selected option you have. And I believe in the packet, we had proposals from AECom for both the 1A and the 3A, and we can go over those if you have questions. Also in your packet was landscape design services, because once this is restored, I think everybody recognizes then you need to come back and replant and make sure you replant in the appropriate way so that it's not only consistent with what we've done at Forest Park, but also it further helps stabilize those areas that are being impacted. And then the final two were things that really came out of staff conversations after the last meeting, and Sally just touched on them, is to really work with the Park and Recreation Board once the council decides which option it wants to go to, and we understand what that time frame is going to be. That gives us a better idea as to what the impacts are going to be on the 2019 beach operations and parking plan, and we can begin to promote that. And I think part of the problem we had last year was that we had no plan, and so when people would ask questions, what are we doing, we couldn't tell them anything. And we have to be able to communicate early and often. And I think one of the things that was very successful with the Forest Park project was a beautiful poster that was down there that explained, here's what's going on. And so anybody who went down there could easily understand what the progress is, what's being done, why we're doing things, and go from there. And then as a part of that, once the Park and Rec Board has completed their work and reported back to the City Council, come up with that communications plan to make sure that we can get the word out via the dialogue, via the website, via home mailings, whatever we decide to do to try and get the word out so that there's no misunderstanding about what that time frame is and what the work is going to be done. And that completes our presentation. And as I said, we've got the A-team here to help answer any questions that you might have about anything that we've presented here this evening.
So I think, as we usually do, let's have a round or two of questions about the material presented, factual and otherwise. We then have a further report, more input about some things going on. So we'll just start. Alderman?
I don't have any questions, but I do have comments, so maybe do the questions and then I can
think
come
so.
back with.
Let's do facts and then we'll get to comments. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, let me just, so I'm looking at the documents from the other engineering companies that were in our materials. May I ask a question about that?
Oh, yeah, they're fair
Absolutely.
game.
So
And
probably
which
my guess would be
document?
for you. I would like to say, I think we had asked for sort of second opinion things at the last meeting, and that was, as I recall, only 2 weeks ago. And the fact that we had these two in time for us to review them for this meeting is deeply appreciated by, I know, all the aldermen, and so I'd like to thank the representatives of those companies here. Also, interestingly, I think they brought up a couple of issues that you know, give us some other things to consider. And one, and I can't remember now which company, commented about the road's proximity, the road will be closer to the lake, and I just thought we might want to,
Mike?
that may have caught other people's attention.
Mike, that's
Mike,
your
I think that
comment.
was yours, wasn't it? If you want to just get, I'm assuming we are going to do some sort of a plan, putting lake levels in
Oh,
mind.
this was the, yeah, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, Mike Black. This was the option of pushing the road further to the east.
Correct.
And you know, I don't know how far it would go down, but the ordinary high water level of Lake Michigan is, you need to be above that. And looking at the photograph of of that north cell, there's a pretty good stone revetment out here, and you're going to be well above it. So I don't really see that as being a big concern, to be
You were
honest.
just suggesting we bear that in mind, that when
Yes.
you're moving the road closer to the lake, there
Closer
is.
to the-
we
closer to
need
the lake.
We need to just be aware of that as a.
Correct.
Because I was thinking our parking lots are fairly close to our parking lot at that end is pretty close to the lake too,
Yep.
isn't it? So-
I think it would be fine.
Okay, good, thank you, just the answer I was hoping for.
Can I add on to that? Because I'm,
Sure.
so you're saying, I just saw the damage from the most recent hurricane, and it always surprises me how much damage water does to a roadway. I got an email earlier today from former Alderman Edelman, I always love saying that, Alderman Edelman, that the South Beach access road has been replaced twice. Has it been replaced because of the bluff sliding or because of some other reason?
Well, I think that was part of Alderman Edelman's email, was the fact that you may recall when, in 2012, when we addressed the South Beach Access Road, there was a concern about removing too many trees and doing too much change. And so we did minimal work, and I don't know if Bill can address this or Mike wants to address this, but basically we did not do the full amount of work that we should have done, which we ultimately came back in 2016 and lowered the road, and had to do all the other work, because you might remember it was more on the ravine side, on the west side of the road, that we built that retaining wall, but we knew that that wasn't going to necessarily be the long-term solution. And I don't know
Okay,
if
so I
Mike or
guess
Bill-
what I'm really asking is, if you move this road 20 feet to the east, do we gain or lose stability in relation to the bluff?
I think, well, I'll let Mike come forward. Here up on the screen here is the proposed option 3A with moving the road here. And I think the plan is you move this, and Bill can address the details of the design of the road, but then you're rebuilding this bluff to the 2-to-1 slope, which adds that stability that you want to have at a minimum.
Right. I guess that's the part, I mean, I saw the comment about it being closer to the lake and possibly wave damage or something like that, but really, the big storms are coming out of the north and northwest, pushing the water to the other side of the lake, I think, right?
Yeah, and I think what what Mike Bleck was just referring to is, keep in mind that you do have this stone revetment here
Yeah.
in place as a part of the original beach project. It's going
You
to.
know, from the 85, 86 project, first of all, the road's moving 30 feet,
Right.
which is almost minuscule. I mean, it's minuscule in terms of the scale of the physics here. That large revetment that comes out and goes into the lake actually goes back into the bluff, more towards the ends where the ravine, the famous North Beach Access Road ravine, comes out. And yes, the water, the day we started the construction project, was 2 feet higher than it is today. So we were dealing with a completely different wave environment. What was built was meant to deal with that. So I think we're pretty darn armored, and I think some of the initial sketches I've seen for the base of that road with some structural stone down there.
Right, I just hadn't really fully understood the engineering about this 2-to-1 slope as it relates to the road, and I think it gives us a road that's going to be in pretty good shape for a much longer period of time. That's what it seems like to me.
I think so, yeah.
Well, don't we also do some sand buildup for the winter months? Don't we put up sort of some berms along parts of the beach? So that would further protect that road from winter storms at any rate, right? Sally's nodding, yeah.
I'm Bill Weaver from AECOM, so I can answer that a little bit. So the fill is moving closer to the water by relocating the road about 30 feet. And we're still up at a very high elevation above the mean and ordinary high water mark. That doesn't mean that wave uprush couldn't tiptoe up to the edge of that thing. So we actually have a small stone revetment on the edge here. It'll probably be about 3 feet below the sand, recessed below, and 3 or 4 feet above. And that'll be refined and designed. So we did recognize that potential stress. And in design, we'll make sure we have a protection for that.
Other questions?
Other questions?
I have just a question for Chuck. And I think you touched on it in your report, but can you, again, sort of discuss the potential impact to the remaining trees on the bluff under the 1A option if we're bringing these semis across that property? I'm talking about soil compaction around the roots of some of the trees to the west.
Yeah, I can speak to that. And we have talked to contractors about this a little bit. So this is the line that we've been told is going to be the cut that would be made. So that's how far the grading goes. But the trees along the edge here, we did have concern about. And we looked at those. If you destroy the root zone, I think everyone knows if you do enough damage to it, you're going to kill the tree eventually. It may take a few years, but so we're very well aware of that, and we've looked at ways we can protect those. So 2 of the trees, the ones that you see there on the outside of the, right in here and here, those are actually ones that are pretty close, and they will be impacted. But we think that with working with the engineers and working with the contractors, we can save those trees. So we'll do what we can. There are procedures when you're about to do construction that will help those trees. We have concern about them, and we want to have our staff on site working with them, arborists, that can make sure that those aren't impacted any more than they have to be. Some of the trees in this area, we're also, we don't have the final design work done, but the contractor that we've talked to has said that they can work with us. Obviously, they have to bring big machinery in there. They've also mentioned that they would bring some large structures, similar to what is being used on the North Beach access road right now to protect the road. There's similar structures that absorb a lot of that weight on the roots. So the idea is to spread out the heavy equipment weight over a much larger area. So we are going to do whatever we can to prevent, as much as possible, any kind of impact on the trees. It is a big concern of ours. We don't want to do all this work, and the trees don't necessarily show signs of failure right away, but if the root system is destroyed, they will.
Now, just to clarify something, the particular slide you're showing there is option 1A.
Correct. It's
So
1A.
under 3A, where does the
3A,
red line go?
I was talking about 1A.
there is, the red line doesn't exist in 3A. 3A, this is the edge right now. Obviously, it's generalized.
Right.
Because the bluff is slipped right here. So all of the work would be from either down below or working around the top. So there is no real impact
Okay, I
expected.
just wanted to be clear that
I
hadn't
think-
changed
I
in
think
the
my
design.
point being that there's no guarantee that it would be limited to 17 trees, that there could certainly be impact to significantly more trees under the 1A option was my point. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I just ask as a follow-up in terms of the increased number of trucks? So I've just got my fingers here seriously crossed on 3A, and I'm just going to lay that right out there. But I know we're not supposed to be doing that yet. It's questions. So here's my question. It's more than twice as many trucks bringing stuff in on 3A than taking them out. Is there potential damage to our vegetation with that? I mean, or is it just that it's going to be more trucks in a neighborhood, which we're very aware of as a residential neighborhood? So
Very much the latter.
Ladder. All right, so the more trucks
Yep.
is just that it's more trucks.
And I'll let Michael jump in if I say
But not-
anything wrong, but no, I would anticipate very little damage in that case. Here's Jim just put up this, so they would be using the main road to go down.
Right.
The trucks would not go in here, so you wouldn't have impact to the tableland.
How many per day do you think?
Sorry?
How many trucks per day?
Well, it was, what did he say? He's hoping for 8 per hour, and I assume, what's that? 8 per hour coming out, so assuming they work an 8-hour day, so probably 60-plus trucks a day.
But no closing of Lake Road in this plan. I'm not seeing any red lines closed on Lake Road because our staging is done from the bottom.
Exactly, right.
So that is a benefit, I would think.
In 1A, you have to close the road so there's
Yeah.
room to work.
Yeah, I got it.
And this area would most likely be staging, I don't want to say staging, they're probably not going to put material, but trucks and equipment, they have to turn around and maneuver. They are large pieces of equipment. This offers a whole lot more room for that equipment.
And just one more, those 3 trees you're going to be removing, they'll be replaced, I assume, the ones that are in bad shape in that prior slide?
Well, we don't have, you're talking about the ones in poor condition?
Correct.
Those are right on the edge of the bluff. So, I mean, they're the ones, the few remaining right on the top. There are already some replacements there. There's a couple of small oaks that were planted as part of the demonstration project. We're trying to stick to the natural areas management plan, so I won't promise that those will be replaced, but we are continuing to plant the bluff. There'll be more planting in the future.
Just one more follow-up on that point. If you go back to 1A, the topographical, what we don't see here is the significant rerouting of the ring road once we're done with 1A. So that whole bend would be pushed to the west and rebuilt. And so again, you lose quite a bit of what is existing parkland just by the rerouting of that road, as I see it.
Yeah, and right in here, as I understand it, the ring road would come, sorry, you might want to go back to that one if you could. Yeah. If I'm understanding your question correctly.
That's where it looks.
So the ring road would cut through here. There are some trees in here.
You need 1A.
One of them on the corner is a large ash tree that's not in the greatest shape, so that wouldn't be a huge loss. There's one, the only notable one that I'll mention is about a 10 to 12 inch hickory that's in there that I would rather not lose, but I mean, it's not as significant as the other area. There are some other smaller trees, but as I understand it, minimal tree impacts there.
Does the ring road change in 3A or in 1A? Or in
1A.
1A.
Okay, because what we're seeing here is 3A.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm using this one because it was easier.
Okay, no, I got
to-
it, but I just want to be clear.
Yep.
I'm trying to
Yeah, I
make as
probably should have
stark a
had this one up.
differentiation between the two options in my mind as I can.
And the rerouting of the ring road is assumed in the estimate for 1A, correct?
Yes, it is.
Well, one question that I have not yet asked, and I don't fully understand it. In either option, we have not talked about water management in the context of the bluff, man-made constructs in the context of bluff management and these two options. Would we be doing, and besides the ravine, would we be doing anything as it relates to man-made installations, if you will, to collect water off the bluff and direct it?
Yeah, I
Or
know
would we just rely on nature to filter it?
Well, some of that was done as a part of the demonstration project, so we could have Mike Bleck talk about that, because he did it, but we'll also, Bill Weaver can talk about sort of what's going on and what would happen under these two options.
So the bluff face itself, as it's reconstructed, will have a new drainage system installed. It'll be positioned over the sand seam, which is about 15 feet below the tableland. And that sand seam is what carries the groundwater to the face of the bluff. And then that water will be collected up high in the bluff and then directed in a pipe down to the bottom where we have a stormwater system. The tableland, Mike can maybe add to that, but the tableland is already drained away from the bluff face, and it will be continued to be drained in the same fashion in the future.
So that's a single pipe collector system. So there'll be a collector system that allows water to drain to a single pipe down the
Yeah,
bluff
so-
to an inlet.
So all along, 15 feet below the tableland, and the tableland is about 55 feet above the beach. 15 feet down, there'll be a pipe that's parallel to the beach.
Okay, got
And
it,
then in the middle of that, there'll be a pipe that goes straight down to the bottom.
got it.
So we keep it off altogether.
Isn't that sand seam that you're describing, isn't that the most unstable part of the bluff?
Not as long as it's well drained, and it's at a good slope. And it'll have a special geocomposite fabric where it's exposed, which is a double-layer fabric with like a waffle plastic, so that any water that comes through is drained down through that fabric into this collector pipe. But if you keep it dry, it'll be very stable.
And the collector pipe would would be positioned underneath the road at the easternmost edge or surface of the road, from the bluff to underneath the road? Is it?
So there's a pipe under the existing road, so in option 1A, it would be directed to that pipe. In option 3A, there'll be a new pipe in the new road location, and it would be directed to that pipe.
In neither case, would the water be directed to the ravine?
No, it actually goes to the beach.
Got it. Thank you.
Go ahead. Richard.
Okay, and I just have a bigger picture question for Mike Thomas. If you could maybe, I know this would be a hard one to answer, but in watch area 2 and 3, because we're really custodians of this whole bluff, right, this whole beach. And I'm just curious, for the moderate risk areas, if we could ballpark the potential liability of those at this time based on any analysis we've done, and if the bluff that failed was at moderate risk before it failed. I think it's really important for us to think strategically here on this asset and get a real, just general baseline understanding of what the potential further work on the bluff stabilization could be in those areas as well. So if you have any thoughts on that, I appreciate that.
To jump back to the South Beach Access Road and the North Beach Access Road, both were defined as high-risk areas. They were defined in the red. Again, I believe it was around 1.3, 1.4 for South Beach, depending upon the option that City Council chooses, anywhere from 1 to 2 million. On the moderate risk areas, Bill Weaver and I have spoken about that. Obviously, as you noticed in the slides, they're different sizes. So the larger size one is upwards, potentially, of $2 million. The smaller size one is about $1 million. Those we would consider soldier pile walls, something very similar to what you see at the South Beach Access Road, a wall that has tiebacks in it. But again, that is based on access, it's based on appearance, obviously cost as well. But there's going to be different things that are going to drive those moderate risk areas. But yes, not inexpensive by any means.
So I might offer, big picture, great big picture costs. These bluffs extend from essentially Evanston well up to Door County. They're a long way. And Jim, just thank you for the opportunity to parse a wonderful thought you had, but the owner of these bluffs is Mother Nature. And by geologic definition and the operations of the lake and other processes, the drainage of surface water draining through the bluff, is they are inherently not at, the American U.S. defined civil engineer stability. They are in some motion. And Tom Skilling is another AIM member to this, had an interesting chart in his weather map just today that we're 12 inches above average through today, or through Sunday, of rainfall. So instead of our annual rainfall is like 34 inches or something, we're 12 inches, more than a third over. 8 of those inches occurred in May and June. June 27th, is that the date? This thing let go. So my point with all this about Mother Nature and whatnot is that it's a fool's errand to feel that we're in some way a guarantor of any particular section of bluff. The thing to do is to be careful about what we put down below it. So I wouldn't want to have, walkways right there or whatever, and we don't. We actually don't. There's some parking areas that edge in there, but it's not, I don't think, particularly serious myself. And we just have this, we have an intense use right underneath a 2-to-1 headed to a 1-to-1, which is a road, an access road that curves down there. And that's what's really brought this on. So I want to be a little wary in terms of the impression the public has that this is gonna be something we, should absolutely constantly gotta maintain and keep it so not one darn thing ever changes down there, because it's a fool's errand of money. This million something we're gonna spend on this was from initially a slide that was, I don't know, 55 feet is the number I remember, but I mean, it's only 70 lineal feet of the bluff top, so, anyway, a big picture perspective.
Mr. Mayor, would you say that it's likely, I completely agree with you. I mean, we've been trying to figure this out. What can we do? What's the best that we can do to secure the future of the bluff? And I agree with the mayor completely. I think most of us do. It's Mother Nature's property. But it seems to me that if we determine here tonight, or just in general, that we'll do these on a case-by-case basis, right? I mean, this one, there's an urgency to it. We've got that. And we're going to talk a little bit later about why we're treating it in a kind of a unique way, because we do have this urgency and we have the need and we have the 80 parking places, but we're not going to have that condition another time. We certainly could have another bluff slide. And hopefully, we'll be able to think that one through as its own case. We're watching them. So.
I have
Alderman Reisenberg.
I have just one question and then a statement. The question is, I don't really understand the boardwalk. Did the boardwalk provide access to the North Beach, South Beach, or both?
Yeah, actually, we need one that, maybe go to Sally's slide.
Let me tell you why I'm asking the question. So putting the walkway, my sense is it doesn't add access to the South Beach. It's pretty much a North Beach kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that putting the walkway in the South Beach has very low utility value. And I think we might want to consider whether it's worth the money.
Well, let me try and address your comment. Let me answer your question first and then come back to your comment. Let's see, Sally, correct me if I'm wrong, but it generally starts somewhere in this area and it serpentines down, but it ends down here near the North Pavilion. That's where the existing boardwalk occurs. What we were talking about under that design is having this walkway that comes down here and then serpentines emptying out approximately here. I think one of the biggest concerns staff has, and anybody who's used either the South Beach or the North Beach access road, is there's a lot of pedestrian use of both of these roads. And one of our concerns is by removing this access point, which the number of people use prior to us closing it, it's just going to increase the amount of pedestrian access. And that's where you have, on the South Beach access road, you have the people coming in, the boaters coming in, pulling their boats and so forth. So, but that's why we said, I think in our recommendation, we're not suggesting that you spend $300,000 tonight to rebuild that. I think that is likely a project.
The boardwalk.
The boardwalk that you can go and
I don't
get.
think I would rebuild, I think I would spend that money. I'm questioning even spending the money on the south side. Is it for access, the thing is going to access really to the south beach area? Does spending that money really provide the utility that you need to justify the expenditure?
Well, I think also keep in mind you have your north parking lot here, which currently is not accessible, but here is your alternative parking lot. Your overflow parking lot is up here. And so those people on warm holidays and weekends and so forth, this would be their way of parking and then getting down to the beach. Otherwise, they have to walk over here and come down that way.
I'd like to counter.
Just to clarify one thing, there's a stairway
Right.
that goes up and down. Is that to remain?
I believe it is.
I thought so.
Yeah.
That's going to remain, so that's another way. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so there's just a question. It wasn't a point of view.
No, and I don't mean counter in an aggressive way, but I would just
okay.
mention that I use all of these access points not to go from point A to point B.
So what, you're a Fitbit kind of person?
But to do a circuit.
A lot of people.
And without the boardwalk, I will take the South Beach access road and I will get yelled at again. And someday I may even get ticketed. if we do things right. But that's the interest to me. I like the circuit, I like the diversity, and so for me, the boardwalk is extremely important.
Okay.
Almost as important as the trees.
I'm sorry I brought it up. I'm going to say, I'm going to say my last statement. I believe we should get this done tonight. I see no reason not to get this done tonight. It's 10 to 9, and I think we got to begin to really manage our time.
Okay. Hold that
We are
thought.
policy level, not in the weeds, right?
Yeah. Just one comment, because of what you said about the new boardwalk idea.
Yes.
It's just for some design money. We would not be using city money, it'd be grant money only that would build it when, as, and if it ever shows
I
up.
don't think I understood that.
Because it could, it should be ADA accessible, and so there should be grant money.
Maybe we should.
Mayor,
comments for
and
that.
Mayor, could I have
Yes.
ask clarification on that point? Because on the board, I was going to ask if Sally wants to comment on the utility of it and the importance, besides my alderman friend to the right, importance to it. But if we're talking about simply design work, what's the cost? What would be the cost of the city?
Do we have a proposal yet to put that together? Less than 20, more than 20?
Although, if, I'd suggest, rather than take it off the seat of the pants, can I suggest that, we don't see that as critical now, I don't detect that from anyone. Maybe at our November 5th, we can revisit the question of its utility and what the cost would be just to do the design work on the boardwalk.
Be happy to prepare that.
If I could bring us back to the trees, and there's been a lot of discussion on the tree issue, in terms of 3A, by redesigning the roadway, further to the north, is there going to be a loss of trees there?
They're all scrub trees.
I'm sorry, you said if we go with 3A.
Right, if the
Tree-
3A proposal, and we're talking about impact of trees, we're saying there won't be any impact on the tableland area, because we're using the existing bluff edge to work down from there with the fill. But my question goes to, because we do have a redesigning of the roadway, will push the difference of 30 feet to the extent, is there a loss of trees there? That hasn't been mentioned.
There are. So you'd be talking about, you can't see it very well on here, but at the bottom of the bluff, we did inventory that area. There are about 96 trees in there, and they would all come out. But a great number of them are things like black locust, Norway maples. Norway maples are something that we get rid of typically on the bluffs anyway. There are things like a lot of aspen. There are 4 smaller oak trees. There are no heritage trees in there whatsoever. It's an assortment, a lot of different locust type. And
But there is a
things
loss
like
of
that.
vegetation.
There is.
But as I understood the conclusion too, as long as we're talking about the refiguration of that road under 3A, and the concern that was raised in, I think it was the Beck's report, about the fact that it's going to be closer to the lakefront. If I understand correctly, that even assuming, higher water levels than what we have now, the current protection and the current, Bill Weaver talked about of the stonage, we're comfortable that it's going to be a safe road, barring what Mother Nature can throw at us, but the foreseeable events that she can throw at us on that road, we feel it is a stable road that could withstand Mother Nature under anticipated circumstances. Is that a fair statement?
That sounds like an engineering question.
Yeah, we designed for a 100-year storm, lake
Oh,
storm.
don't use that example. We do a design of that, and we have it every other year, it seems. But I'm sorry.
So we look at the frequency of a wave event is the combined probability of a lake level and a wave height.
Right.
So we look at a variety of combinations of that like a 10-year lake level and a 20-year wave, vice versa, a 100-year wave and a normal lake level. And then we oversize. So we don't mess around with the waves because, there's some uncertainty there. So it'll be robust. And the wave action is not going to be very extensive.
And so your design has taken that into account?
Yeah.
Thank you. One other question, in terms of the 1A approach, where you do have that loss of tableland, and I think one of the reports identified it as 29/100ths of an acre in terms of the area. If that approach is taken, is it feasible to have a new path that could be provided on that road that would provide a view, let's say, still a path that would head north, that would provide a panoramic view of the lakefront? Is that something that would be feasible in such plans?
I can attempt to answer that, and one of the engineers can jump in if they think otherwise. The current path that I think you're talking about is...
Right, it meanders through that 30-foot zone, it
runs
seems.
through there. And it is just, there is no material there. It's just a path that was cleared, and there's no stone or anything like that if you haven't been out there. I think it's fairly likely that you could have something like that in that zone. Obviously, this would all be graded, so there won't be anything there, and it would be a bit of a slope. So I'm not sure that you'd want to have a path there. But it is likely that if we don't create a path, someone will. I mean, it'll naturally happen. That would be my thoughts on it, that it certainly, I think it would be very desirable, and someone would want to get back to that peak. It's a beautiful view, so I think it's very likely. We didn't put anything in the plan, or we didn't talk to Mr. Weaver about a formal path or anything like that.
Right. Last question I had, again, was one of the reports talked about an inch-for-inch replacement of the trees that would be lost under 1A, and they gave an example of, I think, 120 3-inch caliber trees for replacement at a cost of like, was it $60,000? Is that been looked at, or is that simply just coming up with the number of caliber of inches lost? Again, if we're talking about trees that are 20, 30 inches caliber, replacing with 3-inch, obviously that's a lot of trees. But I don't know, would the area take 120 trees?
That specific area, I would say no. We would work with the Natural Areas Management Plan to replant it. We already have guidelines that was created by Cliff Miller a few years back. We would use that, and it has, guidelines for density. So we wouldn't want to jam a bunch of trees in that area.
Just to have the inch for inch.
You got it.
Right.
Now, we didn't talk about it, but there are 31 trees that we'd be transplanting
Right.
in 1A. We would need to relocate those as well. And we have plenty of places to put it. They wouldn't go in the area that was recently cleared. They could be anywhere in the park. But again, we'd work with the Forest Park Preservation Board and Cliff Miller to determine that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, would now be the time to ask questions about budget impacts of this?
We could do that. I think what we might do, there's one more bit of information, Alderman Weidler, that perhaps we should, a short report for everybody's benefit, and then maybe staff can talk about the difference between the cost of 1A and the cost of 3A as modified by some donations.
Right, well, it's not just that, but I'd like to know how this is going to impact our capital improvement budget and going
Okay,
it
all
forward.
that.
Well, I think that was one of our main concerns when we talked about, I think there was a strong sense at the last meeting that most of us preferred 3A for the obvious reasons, and I recall being a bit impassioned about not being able to live with myself if we lopped off those 30 feet and got rid of those trees. And I continue to feel the same way. One of the things we thought we would do is try to test whether other people in the community felt the same way. I mean, we all had our own anecdotes. And we agreed that although, and I had talked earlier tonight about the public-private partnership tradition in Lake Forest, this is a completely different kind of project, because those are always very well thought out, often independent boards, this is something that needs to be done, and it needs to be done quickly. So we thought we would see if we could try something a little bit different and see Go to people we absolutely knew were interested in this, in this area because they'd already given resources to the Forest Park project. So that's who we've reached out to. As you recall, at the last meeting, the Forest Park Preservation Board had already committed $100,000 to this project. And several of us on the city council, Alderman Freshlack and Alderman Rummel and the mayor and Alderman Morris and myself have done some reaching out, and we certainly are happy to tell you that we've already doubled that amount in terms of the contacts we've had, and we have a lot of asks out there. So we're over 200,000. Our goal had been, frankly, our goal was always probably as much as we could to do towards that extra 800,000 or 890,000. But in our reaching out to people, we said we were striving initially for 500,000. I've had no experience with trying to raise money like this quickly, but the response we're getting, and I want Jed to weigh in too. The response we're getting is a really good one. I mean, not everybody we've asked has said yes. A lot of people in this town have a lot of things they give to, and some people are just overcommitted to other things. But I think there is real concern, and people are really anxious for us to get this right because it's a permanent solution. So, Jed, why don't you talk a little bit about what you found?
Well, I've done quite a few tours of the bluff with people who've come down saying, I've heard a lot of different rumors about what's happened. Can you take me down and show me what's going on? And almost unanimously, they've come back saying, this is a terrible scar on the park, and we really should do 3A, but there is the budget question. And we've talked to the Director of Finance and Director of Public Works about the $3.3 million budget we typically have for capital projects and what flexibility we have to accommodate this within that. We haven't made a final decision because we're just in the process of beginning that budget, so we'll have to see. There's a number of different options that the Director of Public Works and Director of Finance have suggested, but it's going to take a discussion down the road as we go through this budget season.
Yeah, but if we approve this tonight, then we're kind of, I would be more comfortable if I understood what was happening with some of the other high-priority projects that, public works projects that we have out there. I want to approve this tonight. I'd like to get going on it, but I have some concerns about its
just make a
impact.
point here that at any point in time, we have $30 million of projects, $34 million of projects identified. And prioritization is in the eye of the beholder and so forth. And the city every year doesn't come close to fulfilling the list of capital projects that may be done, of course. And this has been caused by a bluff failure, and so it's moved up the priority list because the road is closed. And so it's risen close to the top, and there's two choices before us. One is about $890,000 or $900,000 more, and we hope to raise an amount of money, and I am looking at everyone, including on television, I solidly believe we will raise a majority of the difference. We are well underway. We have very firm and solid reasons to believe we will get there, to do a majority of it. So the delta is something less than half of that 900,000 as Alderman Morris was alluding to, 2 or 3 score separate projects up over $34 million that we just have to, suffer through as we go through we do every year in the capital budgeting process, and we've got a workshop coming up on that to sort that out. But there's no block out of something that's high priority because of this. There's, again, priority is the eye of the beholder, but there's no particular one thing that I can think of from reflecting on that list that's somehow not going to happen because we do this project and in particular 3A. Is that fair, Jed?
Yes, it is.
Can we move to comments?
I
think we can do comments, and then we'll hear from the audience. Anybody like to speak? So, would you like to speak, Jack?
Let's go with 3A.
Okay.
Next.
I'm not confused.
No?
I'm not
Was that,
confused.
was that pretty clear?
I got it.
Okay.
So, I got, I have no problem with the removal of the existing walkway. So to start with that, I have no problem with the design or the engineering work for the new walkway in its current location, and to get for grant money after that to pay for the 300 if possible. I'm supportive of 3A, but I have two stipulations. I'd like to get it done by July 3rd weekend. So if it's July 16th, let's move it up. And let's try to do that if we can, and we can all try to, kind of celebrate on Flag Day. The fourth option is, I think part of it is that we're good stewards for the beach and the access road. I'm glad to hear the comments that everyone agrees that we're not stewards of the whole thing. It's a little bit of a loaded question. But I really think we need to target reserve money through our budgeting process to get to where it has been for us to be able to react to these types of things. Prior councils have been thoughtful in how they spend and budget to give us the very dry powder that we're using right now. And we have to return that favor to future councils. So I really implore us to think through that. Where would the reserve be if we didn't do this? And let's try to get back there the next year or two. And one
Staff is
lever.
very aware of that.
Yeah.
Just let me intersect. Very aware of that.
Okay.
And we intend to do that.
Yeah, and then for capital in the budgeting process, potentially, we could look at the real estate transfer tax as a growth opportunity, maybe for some revenue. That's all I have.
Thank you. Alderman Marino?
So I'm very concerned about unintended consequences. And as a result, I believe that the best thing we can do is minimize what we do to the bluff. I know that I previously viewed 1A as the best path because it was the lowest cost. And I am concerned about finances, and I know most people I talk to don't want $1 more of taxes if they can avoid it, which is obviously not a reasonable path. So I have altered my views. I do think 3A is the right path. I'm fine with the discussion on the boardwalk as presented. But I do think that to the mayor's earlier points, we have to understand that what we're doing is not a permanent fix. It cannot be a permanent fix because we don't control Mother Nature. So I think that everything we do has to be about maximizing the long-term sustainability of the beach, but recognizing that anything we do is not permanent. We're not creating a man-made structure here. So with that, I'm fine with what was presented. I do not have a time frame here because I don't feel that it's appropriate to force the engineers and design team to fit a time schedule. I'm more concerned with safety of all people, including the workers on the site. So I'm, as much as I would like us to be done by Memorial Day, which was one of my previous comments, I'd be happy if we're done by July 3rd, but I don't have a time frame. That's it.
Okay. Alderman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I share the comments that I think on the boardwalk, it is prudent on us to remove it as a safety hazard, or what we might call in the legal profession, attractive nuisance. But I would suggest maybe not tonight, but next council meeting, talk further on its utility and location and cost, both from a design and then obviously a construction standpoint. On the main issue we have here, I do struggle with it. I do recognize there's a great emotional feeling, and I think Bob's words, our city manager's words early on, there's an emotional impact that is felt by a lot of folks. I guess I don't have the history, I don't have the location to have that, so I look at more away from the emotions and try and examine the facts. And I think what we all do recognize when we say what's essential here, there's two components here. One is achieving bluff stability. That has to be done. And recognizing that we're looking at the high priority area, and I agree with the comments that it's at a later time we should deal with the medium risk or the low risk areas and let Mother Nature tell us when we have to deal with those. I think we have a difficult enough time dealing with the high risk area, but we have to deal with it. And both of the options we have, 1A and 3A, do deal with that stability issue. They establish a 2-to-1 slope, which our engineers tell us is appropriate for achieving bluff stability. The second important essential element is we don't want to lose, we call it the crown jewel. To me, the crown jewel is not this 1/3 acre, less than 1/3 of an acre at the northeast corner of the tableland. The crown jewel is the beach, the beauty of the area, the lakefront. That's our crown jewel, and both 1A and I think 3A still achieve that essential component of accomplishing those that effort. So what we are talking about now is a $1 million difference or delta. And we are talking about, we have a lot of needs here. We have a lot of unknowns even on the bluff that we're talking about of what our future expectations and costs may be. We have the internal, the priorities that we've established in so many other projects. So the $1 million is significant, and it's not our money. It's the money of our taxpayers, and we have a responsibility to them. And so I have to look at it from a cost-benefit standpoint between 1A and 3A. And, the two major factors that seem to go into the cost-benefit analysis is, one, trees. We've talked about trees. None of us like to see us lose trees, but trees can be replanted. Trees can be past their prime. Trees can be, Mother Nature can, cause a tree to fall tomorrow. They're not invincible, and it's a shame to be a loss, but, if you try and, put a value on it, which is not easy to do, it's hard to justify the $1 million price tag for the trees that are not in an area that is clearly visible, from the streetscape standpoint, or, and if you're on the beach, you're not looking up at the trees. This is not, an area or a location that is a prime visibility to the public. And the tableland is the same situation. We don't want to lose it, but, Mother Nature says, the bluff was too steep, leave time happen, and it's going to fail. And it's, again, an area that I don't view as a prime area. So if you try and put a value on it, again, can you say it's worth $1 million? But that then brings us to the next point. Those that feel the emotional impact, what can they contribute for the effort? And, if they can contribute towards the delta, the difference in costs, that's great, and that shows their sincerity and that shows the importance to them. And I compliment them for all the effort they have already put in, the monies they put in, the $4+ million that was referred to earlier. But it's a question of our limited resources, our recognition of what's at stake here, and trying to put a value on it. And to that end, I guess I'm still struggling. I don't have the emotional involvement that other people have. I acknowledge that. I'm sorry about that. But I have the dollar and cents concerns and the concerns to our budget process, our concerns to our revenue stream, concerns to our taxpayer. And so I still have to feel that 1A, short of significant contributions to the delta difference, is the better avenue.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Newman.
I've struggled with this as well. I've been in favor of 3A for most of the time, and I think my opinion got a little bit stronger tonight when I saw the benefits of to the road and to the drainage system on this particular part of the bluff. So I think we get an enhancement there. It does trouble me that it's only 70 feet of a, what do we have, a quarter mile of bluff? That much of which could be unstable. We don't really have a handle on that. So this is a difficult call, but I'm still in favor of 3A.
All right. Alderman.
I could be just about as brief as Alderman Reisenberg. It's 3A for me. It has been from the beginning. I took a long time to take a personal survey with Mr. Meyer and Mr. Thomas of the trees and the impact to that area, and I'm firmly a believer in 3A, and I agree with the mayor. I think that we will make up that delta in contributions. Some of these contributions are from members of the audience tonight, and hopefully some members of the audience on TV. And again, thank you to all of you for your contributions toward this effort, and I think it will prove to be well worth our time and effort to preserve something that's very important to the community.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have said right along that I'm for 3, and I continue to be. I would like to say to Alderman Bushman, and I guess to everyone else, this isn't, I don't think 3A because I'm emotional, although I am. And maybe it was a mistake to even sort of wear that on my sleeve, how I care about this project. I was very involved I was on the board of the Forest Park project. So, and it's my neighborhood. It's my ward, it's my neighborhood. I've lived here, I've lived in this neighborhood right near this park for 40 years. If we old grandchildren there. I mean, this has been an important place in my life. But it feels to me, this was going to be, 1A would be a dramatic change to this park and to this beloved space. And so I'm using my mind and my head to say, can we avoid that? Because I think one of the things I do in my life is take a look at future regret. Am I going to wish later I hadn't done this now? And even as an alderman, I feel like I can use that same lens. Are we doing something that there would have been a way to avoid doing that now? And I think we're finding that there is, that we're getting enough public support, and we'll keep at that. This is an extraordinary, philanthropy is one of our pillars in this community, and we're getting the kind of response that says people care about this. So I don't want it to look like just those of us who are passionate about this space are making a decision on that basis. I feel that I bring both my heart and my mind to it, and for that reason, I'm completely comfortable endorsing 3A.
Thank you.
I agree with 3A. I've always been in favor of 3A, but as I mentioned, when I take the tour with people through the bluff who haven't been there, or haven't gone out there, have differing opinions about why it happened and what it looks like, and you go out there and it sort of takes their breath away in terms of what would happen with 1A in terms of slashing the bluff and removing all of that material versus creating another entrance to the beach, which is going to be much more dramatic. And I understand what Alderman Bushman is saying, but I look at the people that I've talked to as sort of a surrogate for the wider community and what they would expect to see here as a result of our work. So I'm for 3A.
Well, thank you. Before I ask for a motion, are there comments from anyone in the audience regarding this matter? If not, I will ask for, sir, please step forward and identify yourself, although we all know who you are.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My name is Bob Crawford. I live at 676 Lake Road. We have today in front of us one extraordinary piece of real estate. And I think all of us are impressed by this deep intellectual discussion with regarding, our roles, as leaders and elected officials, as well as our responsibility regarding this great landscape we have in front of us. But it's very interesting when you think about and the importance of saving it. But the byproduct of this is going to be this extraordinary road that I think those of us that live there, and of course I've lived there for 25 years, know how sharp that curve is and how potentially dangerous it is. So I think an extraordinary byproduct of what you're doing here is to be able to fix a road, because that is an accident, serious accident waiting to happen, in my judgment, as being a resident for all these years. But thank you for your leadership, and thank you for the way you care for our resources.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Crawford. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion now. Alderman Preschlack got pretty deep in the details, so I will ask you to make a formal motion, which I think reflects a lot of what we've heard. But there's a checklist of things here.
Yes.
If you could find them, no, they're in your, here.
Page 4.
Packet.
Here, take that.
Okay, I move that,
Here, actually, look at the left-hand side of that.
you really put me on the spot here today.
You need any help from me, Jim?
Well, no, there's 6 different things.
Okay.
Five.
Okay. So I move that we direct staff to pursue the repair of the North Beach Access Road Bluff Port design of option 3A. And
You want to take these one at a time?
Yeah.
So
Should we do them, vote them one at a
Why don't we
time?
do them one at a
We have
time?
to
'cause
vote
there's-
one at a time?
Okay.
they
And these
sort
are
of-
roll call votes? Give me that back.
Can I second that motion?
You didn't do so well.
We have a second. Clerk, are you ready? This is a roll call vote.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Morris.
Aye.
Alderman Newman.
Aye.
Alderman Rummel.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
Alderman Bushman.
I'm happy and pleased to make it unanimous. Aye.
Thank you.
8 yeas, 0 nays, motion.
Then there's 2 engineering studies.
Right.
Or engineering for the work.
Do you have the monetary numbers?
Yeah, we just need the numbers.
Yeah,
I think the first one is 208,000.
the,
Because this is for the
All right, where are those?
back.
208,000 is for 3A, both design and construction engineering.
Right.
Okay.
And then,
So I move that we spend $208,000 for design and construction engineering for option 3A.
is there a second?
Second.
Could I ask a clarifying question on that? Because at times we've talked about the design build versus design bid build. Is this the one that's before us now, which of the 2 options is it, or is it the same for both?
This is the full design, so we'll have a full, complete set of plans and specifications that AECom believes they could complete by early February, place the project out to bid, competitive bid, and if everything works out right, bring it back to City Council late February, early March.
Thank you for the clarification.
And how much is the work for Cliff Miller's?
18,740.
18,000.
I don't think we voted on 2
Okay.
yet.
You got to vote on 2, though.
One at a time.
Okay,
One
so
at a time. So reread number 2.
per section 90A of the city's purchasing directive, approve an agreement with AECom in the amount of $208,000 for design and construction engineering services based on option 3A.
It's a roll call vote.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Morris.
Aye.
Alderman Newman.
Aye.
Alderman Rummel.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
Alderman Bushman.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
Make a motion.
Okay, third motion, per section 90A of the city's purchasing directive, approve an agreement with P. Clifford Miller, Inc. in the amount of $18,740 for the landscape design based on option 3A.
Second.
It's a roll call vote.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Morris.
Aye.
Alderman Newman.
Aye.
Alderman Rummel.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
I move to direct staff to begin removing or repairing / removing the existing boardwalk that was closed in June of 2018.
Clarification? Did we set aside the repairing option during our discussion tonight? I thought we decided we were just going to remove it.
Correct.
Yeah,
That was-
I think that's right.
Move, and then
I think that's what we said, or, but I'll just.
Just
yeah.
delete the.
So let me do that again. I move to direct staff to begin removing the existing boardwalk that was closed in June 2018.
Second.
That could be a voice vote.
Okay, this is a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next.
Move to seek engineering design proposals for a redesigned walkway adjacent to the South Beach access road.
I think we're going to table that till
Yeah.
November 5th.
Well, we'll seek them and we'll bring you the proposals back.
You're
at
going to
your
bring the
November
design
meeting.
proposals for us to react to.
Then we'll react. Okay.
So you want me to do it again?
Nope, we've got the consensus.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And that's it?
That wasn't enough?
You've got my cheat sheet. All right,
that was it.
May I ask a question? Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question? Is that all you need tonight?
I think that's more than we were expecting tonight.
We aim to please.
Thank you very much.
Once again, overachievement.
Good. Once again, we try to stay out ahead of the staff. Okay, well, thank you all. To put it in one sentence, I deeply believe we are doing what is in the long-term best interests of Lake Foresters from many, many perspectives. And the staff is on it. Right, Mike? Next item on the agenda is opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. Is there anyone who would like to speak on anything? Seeing none, move to the next item, omnibus vote consideration. We have 7 items. Approval of the October 1st city council meetings minutes. 2, acknowledge receipt of the fiscal year 2018 treasurer's report. 3rd, consideration of an ordinance granting the renewal of a non-exclusive cable television franchise agreement between the City of Lake Forest and Comcast of Illinois. This would be the second and final vote on this matter. 4th, authorization to dispose of city property to N3 Sales. Number 5, consideration of ordinances approving recommendations from the Building Review Board. This would be a first reading and if desired by council, final approval. 6, consideration of an ordinance approving a recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals. This would be first reading and if desired by council, a final approval. 7, authorization for the city manager to enter into a professional services agreement with Lake County Press on professional printing services for the City Dialogue quarterly community-wide newsletter. As we always do, any item could be removed and dealt with separately. If an alderman would like to do that, are there any questions? And if there is not, I would ask for a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Question. On the item about the Lake County Press, I'd like to ask why we think that we did not get references, we did not get samples of work. Why so many no's on that one? Was there not enough time? Were the vendors simply unorganized? It seems very odd to me that we got so many non-responses or incomplete responses.
So for this particular project, we chose to select the request for proposal method. I think that some vendors may be more used to the request for quote method, where you're looking at the price only versus the quality of service that's provided, the firm's experience, and their qualifications. So this method took a look at the firm in its entirety versus just the price that they proposed. The firms were given approximately 3 weeks to submit their proposals. which is outlined in the write-up. So I believe we did give them adequate time for this particular project and for the proposal that was put together, or the RFP document that was put together. It outlined all the submission guidelines, and unfortunately, that's what we received.
Are you surprised by the variance in bids received? Because they seem pretty extensive.
We did push the RFP document out to 20 local vendors, as well as the website. And we also published it in the Lake County News Sun. So we received bids from companies that were located here in Lake County, some that were located outside the state. We did notice that there was a variance between some vendors and others, and you could also see that in the quality of their proposal. And so if they didn't meet those guidelines, we rejected the bids.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second, I believe. It's a roll call vote.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Morris.
Aye.
Alderman Newman.
Aye.
Alderman Rummel.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
Alderman Bushman.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
Thank you. There's no other further agenda items, therefore I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.